Good morning. Today is Wednesday, July the 12th. This Committee of Finance, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is called to order. This Committee of the Whole, my apologies, this Committee of the Whole is called to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Griffin,
Here.
Bishop, Conwell. Here. Gray, Hairston. Harsh. Here. House. Jones. Casey. Present. Kelly. Orr. McCormick. Present. Valencia.
Present.
Santana. Sly. Present. Spencer. Present. Starr. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you so much. Please mark Mr. Bishop as present, and then we also have Ms. Gray that just joined us. Okay, let's jump right into legislation. As always, we always have the guests join us first. And first up, we'll have Kara Morehouse, if the President and CEO Kara Morehouse and the Economic Development Director could join us at the table. And this is ordinance number 715-2023 by Councilmember Griffin, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Economic Development to enter into a grant agreement with Kara Morehouse to provide economic development assistance to partially finance completion of theater wing renovations. And this is the first time we have the illustrious Economic Development Director, Terry Hamilton Brown, with us. Before we go into our presentation, I know her very well. She is a very sound and professional economic development specialist, but let me let her tell a little bit about herself before we move forward.
Do I need to push this one?
Yes,
Okay.
and pull the mic up close to you. When it's green, yep. Been a while since you've been down here.
You didn't have fancy things.
I
then.
know. That's what I said. So please.
Good morning,
Good
Council
morning.
President and members of City Council. Thank you for your very kind introduction, and it really is a pleasure to be back before you and to be here helping the administration in economic development. 25 years ago, I was the Director of Community Development here at the city, where I served for about 8 years before moving on to Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority. So public service is in my blood, and community and economic development has been a career for many years. So I am delighted to bring before you a resolution of support for a $500,000 grant for Kara Morehouse. I'm joined by Tony Sias, its president and CEO. The funding source would be ARPA monies, and this is to complete their third phase of renovation. I'll let Mr. Sias talk more about the organization and why these dollars are so important, but it will complete the project, and so it's very much needed. As many projects are experiencing delays due to supply chain problems, labor shortages, and cost inflation, it's very good for public funds to come in at the end and assure completion. And Kara Morehouse is just a vital and premier organization. Mr. Sias?
Good morning, and thank you,
Morning.
Council President and Terry and Council individuals. Kara Morehouse, the oldest black producing theater in the country, celebrating 108 years, and is, again, one of Cleveland's treasures and national treasures. We've successfully gone through phase 1 and 2 of construction, and we are now at phase 3. This phase 3, as Ms. Hamilton Brown just mentioned, has due to supply chain issues, cost overruns, and the list goes on. What we're really focused in on this phase 3, though, is around economic impact, earned income for the institution, and overarching accessibility. So ADA accessibility is really important for this project as we then finish this capstone. And so the support will allow us to bring this project to closure.
All right. Thank you so much. And I will tell anyone this is in Ward 6. And I am very actively involved in Kara Morehouse. I serve in that facility as a council president. The council president, my role is the council member, so they have me as one of the members as my role as council president. So I want to make sure I clarify that and make sure I have full disclosure. Then number two, I did want to clarify that this is one of the allocations that, even though it says ARPA, this is the money that we are putting into the general fund, that is the American Rescue Recovery dollars. So there's a fund that we have that has moved this to the general fund, so it's not necessarily just under the ARPA guidelines as the federal government. So wanted to make sure that I clarified those couple of things. The last thing that I will do in addition to turning it over to my colleague, Carrie McCormick, I don't want to be premature, but it's my understanding that Karamu did get a very, very large couple of philanthropic contributions that will be possibly coming up. So these dollars helped open up the door. And I'll leave whatever announcements to Tony, but I believe these dollars opened up the door for several millions in philanthropic commitments. So this is one of those commitments that our small seed has gone to lead to a lot more investments. Okay?
Will Cap, thank you.
So I will toss it over to Councilman Carrie McCormick.
Thank you,
Anybody
Mr.
else?
Chairman, and allow me a
Conwell?
point of personal privilege, please. Are you sure we can't keep you?
Very kind of you to ask. That would not be my decision.
All right. Well, good to see you, Director, and thank you for serving in this preliminary role as the change in administration. And I think you have immediate confidence in a lot of people in this community because of your really storied career. And so just good to see you at this table, and happy that you're serving the city, and even if in a short-term role, but really good to see you. So
Thank you.
Happy to have you at the table. Mr. Chairman, I just speak in support. What's our number here? 7/15/2023. Karamu House, it's one of the, most important cultural institutions in the city of Cleveland. Director Size has done an incredible job, shepherding the organization through capital and expanding throughout the community. I would also say in getting the word out about this really, really important cultural gem in Cleveland. So, this is one of those investments that, it's hard to find more important investments in our community when we think about the overall holistic well-being of our residents, our citizens, and of course the arts and culture are a critical component of that. So, again, thank you for the good work you do, Director.
Thank you.
Throughout all of our community. This is a critical investment to ensure that you guys are thriving for another 108
That's it.
years and beyond, let's hope. But Mr. Chairman, I just, this is such an important cultural institution in Cleveland, and just really want to speak in support of 7/15/2023. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councilman Kevin Conwell.
Thank you very much. I'm so glad to see Director Tony Silas come in here through the chair. He and I have been friends for a very, very long time. He works with the children a lot. When you look at, children need to see success every single day. And so when you look at what's going on in the community, you look at the crime, and because of idle hands, there's a lot of kids just out there in the community just doing things. The Karamu House, not Karamu House, the Karamu House, the correct pronunciation for Karamu is the Karamu. Children go there all the time. They're there. You could bring the magic touch to a lot of our recreation centers. When you go in there, council member, it's packed to the wall. Children learning the arts, dancing. And he teaches, Tony Silas, my good friend, he teaches character. He teaches character to the children in the community. Hundreds of children from all over the city is there. Character of self-discipline, character, organizational skills, character of reading. Because you have to read, even when you do plays, you have to read and study parts. It's similar to project management. This guy even writes plays. And as I mentioned to him, my background is at the Karamu House also. I've done several plays with you guys, Guys and Dolls, Ain't Misbehaving, Tamarines to Glory, a lot of different Mahalia sings. I did with you guys, different plays. And man, so when I think about the Karamu House, man, and a lot of the musicians, artists out there, they smile when you say you guys. So even if it's more than $500,000, you're going to get some outcome measures from here. Outcome measures. And let me say this also about the director. The Karamu House was going in a bad direction, and they hired my good friend Tony Silas. And when you looked up, you saw me looking right at you when they first hired you, and I congratulated you on that first week. I went to Ward 6, because I don't look at council president, Ward 6 or Ward 7, whatever the case may be. It's about the good of the whole. And I came in and I congratulated him for being there. And I said, Tony, you can call me anytime you want to. Didn't I say that? Because you guys, all you have to do, to my colleagues, visit the Karamu House. Visit, go in there to visit, and you'll see a lot of the work, and you will see magic there, and you'll see good outcome measures from the dollars here also at the Karamu House. And you'll see children with discipline. If we had the magic touch that this guy had, and that he's pushing in that area, that would be cool beans, man. That would be cool beans. It would be very, very good and great. I know I could go on and on about the Karamu House, because I come from you, man. And let me say this at the table to the director. With Sonia Pryor-Jones, we've given dollars to a lot of institutions like yours, and you never ever came to us for any dollars, for any programming. And it kind of hurt me that you haven't. And I'm saying this sincerely, because I know about your goals and objectives. If you come to us, we could do a lot of other programming and in the schools, whatever the case may be, because you guys do good things. And I know that's how you keep crime down, by showing children success. And they will see that success just by becoming a member of the Karamu Nyama House. Nyama means house in Swahili also. So I'm happy, man. I'm very happy. It's good to see you. Thank you, and God bless. And thanks, people, for listening to me. And I have to personally shake your hand at the table.
All right. All right. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 715-2023 stands approved. Once again, I really hope at the end of the day, if you could work with our policy staff, one of the things we're trying to track is, Director, when we make these allocations, how does the rest in the other capital stacks look in order to really put us in a position to show how this we cannot announce publicly right now, but we'll be coming forth in a very short order.
Yes.
Okay?
In the next week or so.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hey,
All right.
Council
Yes.
President, may I say one thing to Councilman McCormick? I may have misspoken. I didn't want to suggest I'm not enjoying my work or so. I was really only saying it's the administration's choice about moving forward, okay? I very much enjoy being here. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Don't go far. I think you're still.
Are you going to let me?
Yeah, we got, because we have, oh no, I think capital projects is next, and then we'll be back up with economic development, okay? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Please sign on to 715-2023. Thank you. Here you go. All right. Next up is ordinance number 707-2023, as amended by Council Members McCormick, Bishop, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to lease certain property located at 1302 Euclid Avenue to the Playhouse Square Foundation for a term of 5 years, with one option to renew for an additional 5-year period, exercisable by the Director of Capital Projects. Ms. DeGeneiro and Mr. Thomas, welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Okay. Okay. Just real quick, a reminder, please sign for all the committees for, if you're on development, planning and sustainability, and finance for the Karamu 715 piece, okay? All right, thank you. Thank you for reminding me of that. This is committee of the whole. I got to get reacclimated. Ms. DeGeneiro.
Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Suzanne DeGennaro. I'm the Commissioner of Real Estate, and I have with me Tom Einhaus, who is the Vice President of Facilities and Capital for Playhouse Square Foundation. We are here regarding Ordinance 707-2023, under which the city wishes to lease an approximately 659 square foot concession stand located at 1302 Euclid Avenue on US Bank Plaza in Playhouse Square to the Playhouse Square Foundation. Playhouse Square Foundation is always looking for ways to activate the public plaza, and to that end, they program various events there, wonderful musical events and other community events. And they were recently approached by a restaurant operator who wishes to operate a year-round fresh foods concept concession in the concession stand. To give you a little background and history, in 1996, the city issued an encroachment permit to Playhouse Square Foundation to construct the concession stand. It's a very handsome building. It was most recently occupied by Dynamite Burgers, which closed in 2019. And it has unfortunately been vacant ever since. But now we've got some interest from an operator. They are looking to be in there with hours of operation Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 p.m., and weekends, 10:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. The lease with Playhouse Square Foundation would be for $1 a year in exchange for their continuing to program events on the plaza. They maintain the plaza. They do various capital improvements, including tree planting. They pay property taxes and so forth. And the term of the lease is 5 years with one 5-year option to renew. They will occupy the concession stand under the lease and the balance of the plaza under the encroachment permit, which was issued back in 1996. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Einhaus, do you have anything you want to add?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We raised the initial capital to build the plaza in 1996, and we have spent about at least $100,000 a year for annual maintenance, including tree planting, maintaining the bricks, cleaning everything, keeping the lighting up to date. We did an additional investment of about another $1.5 million in 2013 with the addition of a stage and other public amenities. The proceeds, which have been very slim over the past 20-some years, from the pavilion have been nominal in our annual upkeep and maintenance of the plaza.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Einhaus. This is in District 3, Ward 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All I can say is hallelujah. This plaza has sat quite underutilized and dormant for some time, including the small concession stand in the heart of the downtown neighborhood. I have heard from my residents about why isn't this activated, why isn't this activated, why isn't this activated. So really, really happy that the city is working with Playhouse to get this done and to bring some life into this really important public space that's utilized by a lot of folks that live in downtown, that work in downtown. So fully support this legislation. Really excited about this partnership to bring some life to this public space. We'll be happy to report back to our residents that this is coming back to life. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, Councilman McCormick. And I believe this was also heard in Municipal Services. Councilman Bishop.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I met with Director DeRosa, and we fully vetted this, and we recommend it for passage.
All right, thank you. I'm going to read the amendment. I got to get my mojo back for a minute. The amendment says there's no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. 1, insert a third new whereas clause to read as follows. Whereas Playhouse Square Foundation will provide capital improvements and repairs to the property as well as tree planting and event programming in the surrounding city park, among other things. Okay? And this was signed 6/16/23 by Deborah Rosman, Assistant Director of Law. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number, what is that? 707 stands approved. Thank you so much, Ms. DeGenero.
Thank you.
Very much.
All right, thank you. All right. Back together. Once again, please remember, if you're a part of municipal services and if you're a part of finance, diversity, and equity and inclusion, please sign on. Thank you so much. Okay, next up is, we're going to stick with capital improvements. If Mr. Edmondson or Ms. Johnson or Ms. Chambers, I apologize, are they joining us? All right, thank you. First ordinance is ordinance number 647-2023, as amended by Councilmembers Bishop and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance giving consent of the City of Cleveland to the Director of Transportation of the State of Ohio to construct improvements at various intersections in the city under pedestrian safety improvement project and authorizing agreements. Ms. Chambers, or
Rick
you're going to be
is
Mr.
prepared and ready.
Switowski? Okay. And let me read the amendment again. Make sure I read the amendment into the record. There is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. Number one, in the title, at the end, insert and to cause payment to the city's share of the improvement to the state. Number two, insert new section 9 to read as follows. Section 9, that this council authorizes payment to the state of Ohio for the city's share of the cost of the improvement from fund numbers 20SF 565, 20SF 574, 20SF 579, 20SF 586, 20SF 592, 20SF 597, 20SF 702, 20SF 712 from the fund or funds to which are credited the proceeds from the state of future bonds, if issued for this purpose, and from any other funds approved by the Director of Finance. RQS 0103, RLA 2023-55, and then number 3, renumber existing Section 9 to new Section 10. This was done on 6/1/23 by Stephanie Melnick. Please proceed.
Thank you. ODOT will arrange for the preparation of construction plans and specifications, including engineering reports, and for supervision and administration of construction costs, and contribute 100% of the eligible costs. The pedestrian safety improvement project within the city of Cleveland includes enhancements of pavement markings, signage, roadway features, and signalization. The roadway features consist of ADA ramps, curb extensions, refuge islands, and reducing curb radii. The signalization consists of pedestrian hybrid beacons, new pedestrian countdown signals, and upgrades to pedestrian countdown signals. This is actually the second pedestrian safety project that we've had. The last one was about 2 years ago. We had 42 locations in that one and was solely in the city of Cleveland. This one, you note, has a $1.8 million construction estimate. There's actually included in the work ODOT's doing under this contract other locations in Euclid and Lorraine. The city of Cleveland's portion is about $530,000. Our local contribution is 10% of construction, 10% of design, and 100% of construction administration for about $83,000.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Bishop, this was, I believe you talked with them about this in municipal services and properties?
Yes, Mr. President. I met with Capital Projects and we discussed this, and we personally recommend this for passage. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Seeing no questions regarding, we got one question, Councilman Kerry McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to speak in support of this ordinance. Commissioner Switolski has been calling me, and I have failed to return his phone call for like a week, so I just want to publicly apologize for that. But I think these are important. It's been a crazy few days.
I can imagine.
But just want to speak in support of these pedestrian safety enhancements and traffic calming. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 647-2023 as amended stands approved. Please sign on. There you go. Next up is ordinance number 704 2023 by council members Bishop and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to amend section 505.07 and various sections of chapter 513 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, as amended relating to patios and parklets, and to change the name of chapter 513. Who's going to present for this?
Chairman, it'll be myself, Robert.
Mr. Knopf?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Chairman. My name is Robert Knopf, Section Chief for Permits and Sidewalks for Engineering and Construction Department within MOCAP. Thank you very much for allowing us to go and present this. So this is for the proposal for the proposed patio and parklet codification changes.
And if I'm not mistaken, this is also loaded on everyone's iPad. So this is also on your iPad, but then they're also on here. We might need a little help with technology. If we can get a little help, somebody can help him out a little bit. And once again, this is on your tablets. Here we go. All right, we're going to use the clicker for right now until we figure out if we got to change out the batteries or whatever. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Knopf, until we get the clicker squared away.
Thank you very much. Quick agenda of the presentation. We're going to give a brief history of the patios and parklets, where we've been, where we're going with this, and then we're going to go through some of the major changes within the 513, Section 513, and also 505.07, and then we'll just end up with any questions from the chairman or any members of council. Brief history. Currently, we have the tourist permit, which is a temporary occupancy of outdoor restaurants, was initialized back in 2001. Currently, it's for sidewalk patios only. Typically have around 60 applications per year, 60 to 80. We inspect this annually as part of the renewal, and currently it's for restaurants only. The temporary expansion area permit, the T permits, which was established back in 2021 in response to COVID. They were needed to be removed each year at December 1st, and the temporary program, which included parklets, ended back in November 1st of 2022. Thank you. And then since the T expansion has ended, we end up going and having various businesses requesting that have requested parklets. The parklets are an area within an existing curb lane on a street where parking is permitted that may be used as a business establishment. We decided to go and utilize the existing procedures for the patio permits tours, which is the most efficient way of permitting the parklets. We're supposed to try to get the permanent program established in spring of 2023, which is now coming through. And one of the other issues that we're trying to do is reduce the jersey barriers that were being utilized during the T program. Overall, for Section 513, the section will be renamed as temporary right-of-way occupancy for outdoor patios and parklets. It's combining the T expansion areas into the tours, as we discussed. It's going to be utilized by businesses for patios or parklets. It'll be a one-year permit, which will not have to be removed every year. And the spaces can be used for food or beverage consumption, public seating, or bicycle corrals. We're also going and adding with this what we call POPs, which is the public outdoor parklets. This is going to be able to be utilized by the CDCs. CDCs have more resources than a lot of the smaller businesses. so that a larger area may be able to be made into a parklet, to try to allow for a more consistent curb line where the parklets are going to be. And it'll be part of the troops permit that'll allow the CDCs to know that a parklet has been approved. Pre-approved parklet designs via the Cleveland Neighborhood Progress have been reviewed, and some of these are going to end up being allowed. And we're trying to maintain public accessibility with the parklets allowed by the CDCs. Get another overview. We're changing the name to the temporary right-of-way occupancy for outdoor patios and parklets. The patios and parklets are going to be used for more than just restaurants. For example, like if a clothing store wants an outdoor area for customers to be able to sit in and relax while their other family members are shopping, they could end up, possibly having that. They can't sell anything in the patio or parklet area without a sidewalk sale permit. The parklets can also be used for, again, casual seating, dining, drinking, or the bike corrals. Now we're going to get into some of the specific changes that are happening, just so that the chairman and council can understand specifically what's being changed. First of all, with the definitions, we're defining what the CDC is. We're defining that the outdoor patio, getting rid of the restaurant portion, saying that it means a portion of the public sidewalk is used for a business establishment for its current business operations, and also establishing what a parklet is, which is an area within the existing curb line on a street where parking is permitted by a business establishment for its current business operations, bicycle parking, and other purpose deemed appropriate by the director or by the CDC for food and beverage or other purposes. Biggest change in 513 is going to be allowance of the parklets to be utilized, where before it was only patios. Another major change is allowing the CDCs to sponsor these parklets, which they were never allowed to previously, and that the outdoor patios and parklets will be not only for restaurants, but any business if they desire. 02, some of the changes, the parklets will only be allowed on streets. Previously, they're allowed on courts and alleys, and during our review, we decided that wouldn't be a good location because of how small the courts and alleys tend to be, which is usually about an 8-foot wide section, which wouldn't allow for any pedestrian traffic going around them or vehicular traffic. The encroachment permit is not required for parklets, and that we'll also need they will need a permit to occupy and utilize a patio or parklet. Section 51303, we end up going for the application for the parklets. We request that any information needed to be determined for a protected barrier is adequate. There are many different types, as we discussed before, of pre-built parklets. It was decided to have the businesses submit what they are looking to go and install and have various staff review to approve for safety and otherwise. Application needs a signed statement that the applicant is an officer of the business or CDC. The parklet patio can be extended beyond the frontage of the business if they receive a signed statement of approval from the adjacent property owner. And we are requiring a $10,000 bond that the city can end up utilizing to help remove the patio parklet items if the business is no longer in existence, but still has the patio parklet area out there. Permit fees. We're requesting that the fees now be established by Border Control. This makes it easier for us to go and try to adjust fees every 3 to 5 years, as we should be doing. We also removed the 90-day window where the applicant receives a refund and automatic approval, which is in the ordinance currently. With the extra review that we might need for safety considerations and for any additional information that we're going to require from the applicants, we feel that we might need, especially during the first year or two, might need some extra time to make sure that we can have that approval happen. The permit also now is a strict 12-month permit. Previously, the patio permits were from April 1st to March 31st, with the T permits needing to be removed from November 1st to March 1st. We want this because businesses are more likely to utilize the parklet permits and spend more money if they know that they don't have to remove and store these for 4 months. If the permittee sells or leases the business, a new business owner has 60 days to submit an amended application so that they can go and keep everything that's out there. And the approval committee is the Director of Public Health, Director of Public Safety, Director of Capital Projects, Director of City Planning, and as applicable, the Director of Building and Housing, Public Works, and the Secretary of Landmarks Commission. Permitted locations, again, we changed the term from outdoor restaurant to outdoor patio. Parklets cannot be within 50 foot of an intersection for safety purposes, and the parklets must have some sort of protective barrier. 51307, with the requirements and conditions, a parklet must have signage stating the hours of operation, if it's public or private use, and the permittee's business name. When a business permits a parklet, they must inform the CDC so that the CDC can possibly have the opportunity to create additional parklets for the more continuous curb line. And also the seating of the patios and parklets must be accounted for in determining restroom capacity. That was something that Building and Housing had requested during our discussions with them. 51308, permit suspension revocation. Appeals will now go before the Board of Sidewalk Appeals first, then the Board of Zoning Appeals, and then obviously to court if necessary. Ordinance 505.07 will need to be changed to allow this, which we'll talk about later. And the Director of Capital Projects may revoke the permit if the permittee suspends operations permanently or if there's other safety issues. 51309, removal of tables, chairs, and other equipment. City may seize or remove outdoor patio parklet items in case of emergency. The city may seize or remove the outdoor patio parklet items given a 30-day notice for public or private utility work. And upon termination or revocation of the permit, all parklet items must be removed immediately unless a new business files for an amended permit within 60 days. In the case of the city needing to remove the equipment or parklet items, the city may enforce an impound fee. 51399 changes, penalty changes. Penalties of $100 per day can be enforced by the administrative manager of engineering and construction, Rick. For noncompliance of 513, civil penalties does not limit any criminal offense, so the ability to suspend or revoke the permit. And then 505.07, the Board of Sidewalk Appeals, we're adjusting this. Currently, any issues dealing with patios could go directly to Board of Zoning Appeals. And talking with the planning director, she said that have been extremely busy, so that's why we're trying to do the Board of Sidewalk Appeals initially, try to take a little bit of a load off of them to deal with all issues with sidewalks and reduce the impact to the BOZA. And if an applicant appeals the Board of Sidewalk Appeals, it will then go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. With that, any questions?
All right, I'm going to go right into questions. I have on 704-2023, I have Casey, McCormick, Polincic.
Mr. Chairman, can you put me down?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to our presenters, do council or the CDCs have the ability to object to these?
Currently, to the chairman, to council, currently council receives notification on all the patio permits that we have, so that was going to end up being maintained with this from talking with law. They wanted to go and keep that as a maintained where council gets notified. And if council has any objections, they would let us know of what the why they object to it, so that we can go and try to see if that gets appeased.
All right, and then, Mr. Chairman, I forget your name, I'm sorry.
Mr. Knopf.
What is it?
Mr. Knopf.
Oh, Mr. Knopf.
A-N-O-P-F. F, yeah.
All right, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Knopf. Correct me if I'm wrong, because when I'm listening to this is what I'm envisioning. I'm envisioning Lorraine Avenue, which has some clothing stores and some used appliance stores and some religious stores on it. And I'm picturing driving down Lorraine Avenue and seeing used appliances sitting out on the front sidewalk. I'm picturing, clothing out on the sidewalk. And I know you said that you couldn't, or you can't sell those, or sell the items for sale there, but more or less for a visual notice. Am I envisioning this right?
Chairman of the Council, no.
Okay.
Because as the states, the purposes for the patios or parklets is for the dining, public seating, or for the bike corrals.
Okay.
Unless they have if they have another reason why they would want to utilize this, that would go forth to the Director of Capital Projects, in which case at that point, we can look at and discuss if that's something that we would want to have or not want to have. But no, I did not go and envision it being like a flea market all over Lorraine.
And that's what I just wanted to make sure that that's not what this is doing. And this is for, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Knopp, this is for the purposes of, say it again, I think you mentioned three things.
For dining, public seating, or with the parklets, the bike corrals.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Casey. Next, Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Generally, I'm in support of this ordinance, but I'm seriously concerned about Section F of this ordinance, and let me give a real-life example of that. So Section F requires a letter of support from business establishments, as well as written approval for the property owners immediately adjacent. I have a street in my neighborhood that the mayor, myself, every single business except one, the CDC, the entire community is in support of, but one business owner is overruling all of those people to keep the street open. The business owners on the street are furious with me. They're calling everybody at this table. When is the street going to close down to pedestrians? Everybody loved it. My neighborhood residents are calling me. The CDC is calling me. We cannot make that very pedestrian-friendly street pedestrian this summer because one business owner is objecting who does not live in the city and is objecting and overruling the mayor, overruling myself, overruling Director MoCap, overruling my CDC, overruling every other business on the street that desperately needs this space for their business, overruling my neighborhood residents. So the fact that we have to get a signed letter from all of the business owners will essentially shut any project that you want in your neighborhood. If just one person says no, it shuts the project down. So this is something that I'm very concerned about. I think we should allow for more discretion in the process instead of codifying the fact that there's a requirement to have a letter from all the adjoining business property owners. Because again, as we know in our business, if you needed 100% consent on anything, nothing would happen. So I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if the administration wants to respond to that, but codifying the requirement to have a letter from all the adjoining business owners will derail any community project that you want to do. Through the chair.
To the chair, to the council, the letter for any adjoining property owners is only if they want to expand their parklet in front of their frontage. So if they have a business that has a 50-foot frontage and they want to put a parklet in their frontage, they don't need anyone else's permission. It's only if they're going to put it in front of someone else.
Let me just call it out, Market Avenue, that's all public right away, right? Where their property line stops, it's all public right away. We issue patio permits within the public right of way to those businesses to be able to utilize the public right of way. So what I'm reading here, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that in order to use the city-owned public right of way for a public community use, a property owner who does not own that property, the citizens own that property, will have to sign a letter of support in order to use that public property. Is that correct?
If an adjoining business wants to utilize, to the chairman, to the council, sorry, if the business wants to go and utilize the adjoining frontage, not in front of theirs, then yes, they would have to go and have permission from either the property owner or the business to go and allow them to move their to move it in front of there.
Understood. So, but section 2, the applicant is authorized officer of a CDC located in the city has obtained written approvals from the property owners immediately adjacent to the proposed area to be occupied by a parklet. Such written approvals shall be attached to the signed statement. So if I have Ohio City Inc. that wants to close down Market Avenue to activate it for pedestrians and children and families, they're going to have to get a written sign of approval from those property owners, which would shut the project down.
Well, it would be, so let's say if the CDC wants to put it in a parklet.
Yep.
Okay, and they want to put it in the frontage of a business, okay? Since CDC doesn't have any, let's just say, rights to the frontage at this point, they would need, yes, they would need to have permission from either the property owner or the business to put that there, because if
Through
someone
the chair,
else.
that's the city's property. The right-of-way is
And-
the city's property, true or false?
That is true.
So I'm concerned that we are ceding authority of city property to a private business owner that does not own that property when the councilman, the mayor, the neighborhood development organization says we want to utilize that public property for public use, and one business owner who does not own that property is able to shut it down for the entire street. So that's my concern with sections 1 and 2, Mr. Chairman. Again, I think we are codifying that here rather than leaving the administration, quite frankly, more discretion to make those decisions, and the council to make more decisions over who can or cannot dictate, these types of street activations. But again, I'm very concerned that by authorizing a private property owner who does not own the public property the authority to single-handedly shut down one of these street activations, that we're really handcuffing ourselves for these types of projects.
I understand.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to, maybe commentary, but it's my interest to remove that from the legislation in order to allow the city more flexibility, but I don't know.
Let's do this if we could. Here's what I would prefer to do. Let's hear the complete line of questioning, because I have approximately 3 or 4 other people. And then once we hear the complete line of questioning, then we can proffer a suggested amendment based on getting feedback from the other colleagues and what other concerns they may have as well, okay? On that point, Councilman, would you allow Councilwoman Spencer that point? Okay. Councilwoman, would you want a point on his, or
Just a
do you
point
want to
on
be on his?
Councilman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Just to clarify what Councilman McCormick is stating, in regards to that specific example, is there a difference in our codified ordinances between a street closure and this parklet piece before us now?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Can you clarify, Councilman McCormick?
So let me just use Market Avenue. We have found no tool to allow to activate Market Avenue this summer, and so I'm hopeful that this is a new tool that will do that. But the administration has reported back that there are no existing tools to activate the street, no street closure permit, no obstruction permit, in order to accomplish what the community wants. That's been the report out from the administration.
Mr. Nuff, do you want to respond
If
to
I
that?
could respond to Chairman, to Councilman. With this permit, this ordinance is only for the parklet area, so it's not for closing the entire street. It's for just the parklet area, which is essentially a full-time parking lane within the street. We do have an open streets ordinance that's being fashioned currently. I'm working on that. I actually have a meeting tomorrow with a bunch of Cleveland staff to go over that. That will allow for what you're looking for in terms of complete street closure for non-event purposes and non-construction purposes or parades. So that is being worked on with an ordinance that we have a draft of. I have a draft right now that we are working on.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may respond.
Please, if you
and
could.
I appreciate that. And I would just note, though, that even in the case where, and again, I'll use Market Avenue, where that parking lane there, the businesses would want to move into it, my concern still applies, is that one business owner would be able to shut the entire thing down for all the businesses on the street that wanted to utilize it. So even if this just still applies to utilizing that one lane, my concern still applies.
Understood.
So, Councilman, if you could put a pin in that, and then after we hear comments from the rest of our colleagues, we'll make a determination if we want to proffer an amendment, okay? Next, I have Councilman Mike Polensek.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues, and to the administration. And first of all, I commend you for starting to think out of the box as it pertains to our commercial districts. About a year and a half ago, I went up to Sylvania, which is just northwest of Toledo, just south of the Michigan border, where they have these parklets in their commercial districts. I went up there to look at them. But as looking at them raised, obviously, questions with me. Did you, to whoever in the administration, what other cities or municipalities did you look at?
To Chairman of the Council, we ended up looking mainly at New York. New York had a lot of what we thought was very similar to what we're looking for this. So they were the primary city that I ended up going in when we looked at adjusting the ordinance to go and include the parklets. We also had some, I know out on the West Coast, San Francisco and some of the, I think Seattle also had similar ordinances that we try to incorporate, along with looking at Europe and seeing how Europe went and performed these also. So we looked to a lot of different
So
locations.
Sylvania would be a good city to take a look at right here in Ohio. But there were questions. Some cities have to remove them during the wintertime because of the ability to plow streets. Then there's the question of barriers. If you put a permanent barrier in, that is then a traffic obstruction as well on either side of the parklet. So what I'm trying to understand here, because I'm looking, where I was specifically looking at this was for the Waterloo Arts and Entertainment District. But then serious questions came up because on many of the streetscapes we're doing now across the city, we're putting these bump ins or bump outs, whatever we refer to them as we're doing up on 185th now. So then if someone applies for a parklet, it's taking away more on-street parking. And we know in many of our areas, like, good example, Waterloo, parking is a premium on the street. So what I need to understand is that, is traffic engineering going to be reviewing these requests? When and walk us through, just as a layman, walk us through, I'm XYZ business, I want to put a parklet out in front of my business. How do you walk us through the process?
To Chairman of the Council, the process is that we have our existing application that they'd end up going and filling out, which part of that would end up going and indicating exactly what they're planning on installing. If it's a prefabricated structure that there is many of them out there, then that's one thing. If they want to try to build something of their own, because we're trying to still make sure that there's accessibility requirements that are there, or if they just want to utilize the street themselves and put some sort of barrier similar to like the concrete barriers that we've had, but not city owned. That's going to be up to the businesses to submit to us. The committee that looks at it, like I said, there's a number of people, including safety and traffic engineering, ends up looking at these, and BOT, along with planning and other staff. We'll end up going and reviewing these, seeing if it's safe, because that's the most important part that we're going to be looking for. Is it safe? And, in terms of planning or landmarks, depending on the district, they'll end up going and giving us their comments based on aesthetic purposes, if they feel that this is going to be something that they would like there or not like there. And then we'd have a conversation with the business to go and say, this is what you've submitted. This is the feedback that we're getting from from the review staff. Could you go and adjust this way, based on whatever the feedback that we have to go and move forward with.
And that process starts where, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, make sure. Please
To
proceed.
Chairman of the Council, they would submit the application to my section, to the permits and sidewalk section, and then from there, it balloons out to everyone who needs to be reviewed.
Okay, so you just outlined to us what my major concern is. I don't see any uniformity I don't hear any uniformity. I mean, what's to stop Fred Sanford and Son just schlocking something together and putting it out there? I mean, there's got to be some uniformity as it pertains to these barriers, these parklets. If not, you're going to have a hodgepodge on a street that's going to look like hell, Mr. Chairman. There's got to be some uniformity. We've got to come up with, I don't want to say cookie cutter designs, but Mr. Chairman, but we've got to come up with, here's 3 or 4 that we will accept. If not, our commercial districts are going to look like God knows what, okay? And I don't want that. So I want to stress to the administration uniformity, something that looks pleasant, like these things that I went to look at. That's Sylvania. There's uniformity. They all had to be the same kind, to my colleagues. Yeah. The other thing is, what about consumption of liquor on this parklet?
Chairman of the Council, in terms of, answer your first question, in terms of the uniformity.
Yep.
Right, like I said, right now, there's a lot of pre-built structures that can be utilized for this right now. There's a lot more than what we can end up going and looking at and deciding this is what we want right now. We want to be able to have the business submit to us what we like. What we're planning on doing is over the first year, maybe the second year, depending on the amount of applicants that we have, is coming up with a pre-approved pre-approvals on certain pre-created items to be placed there. We don't know all those right now, but that's where we want to have the businesses come to us and say, this is what we're looking at doing, so that we can end up then creating that list.
Well, Mr. Chairman, again, I want to say this. We've been talking about this in some capacity for a long time, and that's why I decided I'm going to, talking to some people, I went out to look at Sylvania, spent a day out there looking at it. There's got to be uniformity. The game plan, the process has got to be clear and concise how you apply for this. There's the issue with liquor establishments. Their license is for their premise. So we have got to get some understanding and clarification from law as it pertains to the consumption of alcoholic beverages on those parklets. Do they have to make another application to the state to allow that? So that's another question I have, because if not, I can see some problems there as well. I can see some real problems there, okay? I don't need someone intoxicated falling off of a parklet into the line of traffic, okay?
I understand.
And the last point I'm going to make, and I'm going to be adamant about this one to Mr. Chairman and my honorable colleagues, council members have to sign off on it. And I will propose that amendment. We have to sign off on a transfer of land bank lots. We should be allowed to say yes or no on the implementation of a outdoor seating area, just as we do now as it pertains to a patio area. Council members have to be able, so Mr. Chairman, I will propose that amendment, that council members must be permitted to sign off on the placement of a parklet, however you want to describe this, parklet, outdoor seating area within the public right-of-way.
So what I'm going to do, Councilman, once again, I think we have about 3 more people that want to comment. And then at the end, I would like to proffer all the amendments, because I don't want to go point for point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're handling it right.
And if we could have our attorney make sure that he's keeping track of the proposed amendments. So far, I hear that we will potentially have 2. And then what we'll do is at the end, once we hear everybody's comments, then we'll move towards proffering amendments.
So there has to be uniformity, Mr. Chairman, to the administration. There has to be clear rules and regulations, and if it becomes a nuisance, there has to be the ability for quick removal. I don't want to have to battle somebody for years to try to get the placement removed. There has to be a clear and concise, you do not adhere to the rules and regulations, et cetera, bye, it's gone. Or we're coming in there with a forklift and we're moving it. I'm as serious as a heart attack on this. There has to be clear, concise rules. I found out in Sylvania, you had to make sure that thing was clean, maintained. You had to adhere to the set standards in the city as it pertains to that placement and maintenance of that apparatus. So I'm making that, Mr. Chairman. This is an important piece, and I want to commend the administration again for thinking out of the box and listening to members of the body. But like I said, I'm not in a rush to get this done today. I want to make sure it's done right, because summer is almost over anyway. But the fact of the matter, we have to do this right, not that we look back and say, what did we do? We got to make sure this is done right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Knopf, you want to respond?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chairman, the council. Couple of your points. One, in terms of the liquor license, the business would end up having to go and expand the liquor license to include the parklet area or just like they do with the patios.
Okay.
So that's already something that the state regulates how they end up doing that. So that's something that will have to go, that will be up to the business. In terms of the specific guidelines, we have specific guidelines on how we do the patios currently. It's been working out well, and we're just going to be including the parklets as part of that same process. So we do have an in-place process. That's why we wanted to have it included within the patio permit, patio ordinance, because the process has already been there. It's been there for a long time, and it has been working as far as, from what I can tell, it's been working. We haven't gotten a lot of complaints on it. In terms of your other thing with your other amendments, that's something that obviously law would have to go and talk to us about and adjust. So in terms of having the council approval as opposed to just a notification, that's been in the process currently.
Mr. Swatowski, you had something you wanted to add to that?
Sir. To the chair of the council, we did broach this topic of council approval to law. And they think there is some legal issues with doing it, and they really should need to have a further conversation with them before we amend anything to the particular legislation.
So can law come and I'll repeat his answer. He said that law had a concern about the legality of us having to approve it as council. Do you have anything in writing, or is law available to give us why and how that is an issue? If not, it seems like we're going to probably have to continue to work through this, but we still got a few more questions, so
Okay.
they have time to get up here if that's the case.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Next up, I have Councilman Joseph Jones and then Councilman Anthony Hairston.
Mr. Chairman, there's a couple of concerns that I have here on this, but before I start, I want to commend the administration for Mr. Knopf for opening this up so that businesses will have other options to be able to make more money, as well as offer options to its customers. So I understand it fundamentally on the business side. Mr. Polinsik brought up part of what I wanted to talk about is conformity. When you had your slide presentation, if you could pull that up real quick so that the committee can take a look at the different options of what parklets look like.
I have that on the presentation.
That's one of them. That is, this picture that you're showing right here of a parklet is really nice. Is this particular parklet located in the city of Cleveland?
No, it's not. This is one of the ones that the Cleveland neighborhood group ended up going and submitting to us when we had a conversation with them. I'm sorry, Chairman of the Council, I apologize for that. This is one of the ones that the Cleveland neighborhood progress, I believe, the committee ended up going and submitting to us as a potential
So this
parklet,
is-
prefabricated parklet.
Right, so, but this is not in Cleveland. Can you go to the other one, the other slides?
Can we make sure that all questions
Now,
go
is
through the
this in
chair?
Is, Mr. Chairman, to...
Thank you.
Mr. Knopf, is this slide right here that we're seeing, is this in the city of Cleveland?
That was, to the chairman, to council, that was what, over on West 25th Street, what they had during the pandemic. So this is what was utilized back in 2020, 2021 by one of the establishments on West 25th Street.
Now, on the proposition of conformity, right? When we looked at the first slide, it was really nice. And it was complimentary to the community and to our city. This one here, I don't know what your impression is of it, but it is absolutely an eyesore. This is not something I would like to see in my neighborhood or community. And so I appreciate you using the slides to help me to impress upon conformity. Now, what I would say, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Knopf, when I do look at different cities that do have parklets, some of them are really great designs, and some of them are out there in terms of, and one of the reasons why you want, surely a car coming to this one here would not want to run into that, right? But one of the concerns I have is safety. How do we keep our citizens safe if they are now using park locations that would be, actually, it's out in the street. So how do we keep our citizens safe? How do we do that?
Chairman,
Is there a contingency here?
Chairman to council, that's one of the, well, first of all, one of the reasons I had that slide is to go and show, well, this is what we had approved previously. The whole reason why we wanted to make it so it was a year-long permit that they didn't have to remove during the years, because from talking with some businesses, they end up stating that they were more likely to go and to expend more funds for a pre-built, pre-constructed structure as a parklet if they weren't going to have to remove them and try to store these. So that's why, would this be something that we'd end up wanting to approve? No. That's not what we would like to go and have. That's that is what was done previously.
Okay.
So,
all right.
In terms of the conformity, I do agree with that. But like I said, right now, what I want is to have the businesses submit to us what they think, because they might know more, about other things that are being built than what we do, and so that way we can keep our options open to what's going to be the best for the city.
I see.
And in terms of safety-wise, public safety, the safety forces are part of the review committee. So if we see a submission that they end up feeling is not going to be safe for our residents, then that's something that we're going to have to, that we will deal with at that time with that application.
Well, briefly, my perspective and opinion on it is, in terms of the safety component, is if we don't have traffic enforcement in the city of Cleveland now, then it's a big, giant question mark for me on safety. Unless you can, I haven't seen safety enforcement in my neighborhood in quite some time. And when I do see it, it's not consistent. So that would be a concern for me, sitting here at this end of the table, is having the presence and visibility of police consistently in my neighborhood. So for the body that's here and talking about safety, as you know, we're being overwhelmed in our communities in crime. And so, and I don't know if maybe a couple of administrations or this administration or whatever can get a handle on the crime scenario. It's kind of etchy for me right now on the whole proposition of safety. Having them there and having them at the table is one thing, but experiencing life every day in my neighborhood is a whole different ballgame. So, but I want to jump to the next piece here because I know that my other colleagues may have questions on this. Me and Jenny Spencer on this end of the table have been looking at the proposition of making sure that if any of these outlets are to be put in respective communities, that council does get the approve of it happening in their neighborhoods. So I don't think, with all due respect to the law department, we are the people who make the rules, the regulations, and the procedures. And so if we put in this that you have to get councilmatic approval, then you have to get councilmatic approval. I mean, it's just that simple. So anything that the law department is saying about that is hogwash. We're the legislators. We legislate. So and I know that the chairman says, let's hold these all to the end, and I hope that they're getting this down. I would, and Mrs. Spencer, we were talking about this, and I presume we're in agreement. We know what's best for our territory and our neighborhoods, and we live there every day, and we are the bona fide representatives of our communities. And so, Mr. Chairman, we would like to see an amendment to this proposition that it all gets councilmatic approval in the respective territories.
Thank you, Councilman. That was something that we're going to, like I said, talk about at the end of all of the questions. And once again, I've invited Law to come up and have an opinion on this. I don't know if they are watching or if someone has sent them a message, but if they don't come, then we assume that we could just be within our right and move forward. So,
and
we'll
Mr.
let you know.
Chairman, for the sake of time, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Yes, on that point, Councilwoman, on the list. Okay, I will add you to the list. Next up is Councilman Anthony Hairston.
Thank you,
And then Councilman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't take as long. My colleagues have shared some of my sentiments as well. Councilman McCormick raised one point that I had written down here, was regarding, the public right-of-way versus one particular property owner along a stretch that can veto because they are in support of something that the greater good is support of, can just make the whole situation, null. You answered that question already, how that process works and how the involvement it takes. Councilman Polenzek brought up my second point, and Councilman Joe Jones. I will not support this if council does not have sign-off. In fact, I had, and many other members have talked about amending the current ordinance that issues patio permits that came up during COVID, but there was a little bit more understanding that council should have sign-off authority on permits that are issued then as well, similar to what we do to street closure permits and other permits that folks, apply for through the city of Cleveland. Same as we do when a liquor establishment wants to open up have a liquor permit that comes to us. We have to say yes or no, whether we support. And if we don't support and they appeal, then we go through that process, right? Side yards, that's a smaller issue, but that is also where council has input on the transfers of those lots. In fact, I've made it my business that we're going to look at council's sign off on lots other than side yards. So whether it's commercial lots or industrial lots, that council will have, approve the transfer of lots. Because we've seen many times where promises have been made and the council member has no involvement, right? And going back to the whole patio and parklet piece, Mr. Knopf, which, thank you for all the work that you do, sir. Very responsive all the time when we have issues, you and the commissioner. There may be issues with a business that the administration don't know about. We're in the neighborhood. We live there. Many of us are lifelong residents there in these neighborhoods. And so there may be a history with a business that the administration doesn't know about, right? There may be resident complaints about this business that people don't know about. There may be a business that maybe not have complaints, but they already have an overcrowded or overflow number of patrons who take up parking down the street, who park in vacant lots, who park wrong ways. I mean, there could be a lot of things already happening with a business that, can simply apply for this permit and then is granted if they meet those few requirements, right? And Councilman Polenzek said it right. There's no uniformity here. I don't see uniformity because it's all, if you apply, we review these things, we make a decision on whether we support the permit or not. So, Mr. Chair, and I'm also concerned, Mr. Chair, to the table here, that we have an issue with council providing sign-off. But we are giving CDCs the autonomy to create these parklets or these patios by their will. Well, that doesn't make sense to me if that's the case. So there's consideration for one entity, but then one entity can't provide or is not doesn't have the authority to provide sign-off or by law department's comments. I think Mr. Chair, Mr. Knopf wanted to weigh in on that.
Chairman of the Council, in terms of with the CDC sponsored parklets, they'd have to go through the same exact process as a business would. So it's just the fact that we're giving them the allowance to be able to sponsor, additional parklets. So, like I said, let's say there's a business A and a business B who are right here, that both of them want to have parklets. CDC gets notified. The CDC says, "Hey, this would be a great place to possibly do the parklets, to connect the two, to connect the two of them." Then they have the ability to go and, submit for a permit. So they don't just have they can't just build it. They'd have to go through the same process as a business would have to go and do.
And through the chair, thank you for that clarification. And again, just like CDCs, turnover is high with directors, staff members, and those who are doing the work from these organizations. Sometimes businesses have high turnovers with managers and other things. But what you do have many times is, longevity with the members who represent those communities most of the time. You have turnover in council seats, but you typically, these council members are there for quite some time, right? Residents, who are longtime homeowners have been there for quite some time. So there's a better understanding of the neighborhood, the better understanding of the businesses that are there, better understanding of what was versus what's now. And so, I am, again, Mr. President, deeply concerned that, that if council does not have sign-off authority, that, I would not be supporting this piece. It just, because at the end of the day, we all know if something goes wrong, we're the ones that get blamed for it, right? You give a permit, you do or you don't do, we get the blame, right? And so then it's on us to determine how to fix the situation, or we have to, as Councilman Polenzia said, battle with somebody or other individuals about why this place needs to be removed. Well, they say this, well, you say that. Well, to avoid any of that, you have council's sign off and approval of these parklets and these patio situations. I am curious through the chair, because I see the enhancements and changes happening to the patios and parklets ordinance that we currently have. Who else have you all been working with to put this together? Has this all been done? This idea was brought up by the administration, or has there been other individuals, other folks you're working with to put this together? How did this come about?
Chairman of the Council, like I said, this had come about with the temporary expansion area ordinance that was passed, I think in 2021, dealing with the parklets. When that ended, that ordinance was ended, I think, November 1st of 2022. When that ended, there was no other way of to have a parklet at all. We have had the administration had a lot of businesses saying, hey, we want these, we would like these. There's a lot of interest in them. So that's where we I was asked to go and try to find a way of getting a permanent program in place, so we can end up allowing this to happen for the businesses. So when I ended up getting this put on my list of things to do, I ended up going and talking with various departments, along with also other cities, trying to come up with the best ordinance that we could that's going to be flexible, but also going to allow for safety and for the enhancement of the businesses.
Okay. All right, thank you. In closing, Mr. Chair, as Councilman Joe Jones said, we already don't have police visibility, high visibility in our neighborhoods, traffic enforcement, and so the last thing we want to do is to create another situation, where, these things can be just pop up and get a hodgepodge of all kind of things up and down these streets that, at the end of the day, residents are already going through enough, and what they don't need is another situation created that, will have an adverse impact on their community with all of these just randomly pop up, vendors and not vendors, but just patios and parklets just popping up all across the sidewalks and other right-of-ways. So, I think that, we shouldn't rush this. We should take our time. And I see the law department has joined us. I'm sure she wants to jump in and talk about why council cannot have sign-off approval. My thing is, if you're going to, it has to go to the other departments to view planning and other departments. Why is council not, so it's heartburn to it's okay to talk to the other departments in the administration side, but it's heartburn when you have to come across the hall and deal with the council. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Hairston. Councilwoman Spencer, and then I'll entertain Ms. Melnick, and then we'll determine where we want to move. And Councilman Bishop.
Mr. Chair, Councilwoman House may have a point.
House. You want to be on?
You want to get on the list?
Okay. All right, sure.
All right.
All right, please proceed,
Okay,
Councilwoman.
thanks, Council President. I think my colleagues have done a great job really highlighting the matter of council notification and involvement in this process. I do think direct involvement of a council office is necessary to have that whole relationship circle complete for these to be approved. That said, I wanted to first make a point that earlier in this conversation, the question of notification of council offices for patio permits was brought up. I have never, I've been in this job for 2.5 years. I have no recollection of ever having received notification of a patio permit. So, I check every email. It might take me some time, but I see every single email in that inbox, and I have no recollection of ever receiving either a printed or electronic communication about patio permits. So I have no confidence that that same method would work for these parklet permits. So I would like to, through the chair, invite a member of the administration just to clarify patio permit notification, because this is new to me.
Chair to Councilwoman, I know that the council is notified on every single permit that we end up going and receiving. Yes, Councilman McCormick, I know he gets a lot of them, like all the time. You have to remember also there might be patios that are out there that are illegal. So not just because someone has a patio doesn't mean that they've actually gotten it permitted. And that's something that we're trying to work on for enforcing, but that's something that we're trying to bridge. But any application that comes forth, we end up going and sending them to the council member of that ward, and they get notified. So if you haven't received one, then that means that there must not have been any patios that have been permitted within your ward. I could check and verify, go through all of them to make sure. I have a list of the 60-some that have applied so far this year. And if you yourself has been missed, I'll make sure that you know about this. But like I said, we are very strict with making sure that council gets notified on every single one of them.
Ms. Saban, can you make sure that we have a follow-up to get that list of all 66 and who has been notified, so that not only in Councilwoman Spencer's ward, but in all of the other ones? So, Mr. Knopf, if you can follow that up so that we can pay attention to that.
Great.
Please proceed, Councilwoman.
Thank you. And I think that point is well taken. It may very well be the case that businesses, whether intentionally or inadvertently, have not applied for the appropriate permits. So that's a good opportunity to close those loops as well. Notwithstanding that, it seems to me that notification is really, there would be no, I welcome any colleagues to chime in if they do receive these patio notifications, but that doesn't constitute council involvement in the process. So I think, again, don't want to hammering this point, but I think we need to find a way for council to be directly involved in the permitting process. I had another question.
Councilman McCormick would like to have a point. Would you allow him
Sure.
that point? Councilman McCormick, on that point, the council people being involved in that
Yeah,
process.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think that we need to dig into this for Ward 15. For some reason, there's the breakdown there. Just from my experience, they asked me for approval on these. So I don't know why that's not coming your way. It should be. So we got to figure out why that's not coming
Sure.
your way.
It may be the case that my businesses aren't applying for appropriate permits. No, seriously,
like-
and that's okay. I'm not throwing anyone under the
But
bus
but
on the
truly,
record,
if it's
no.
not,
But
if it's not
yeah,
happening, we need to figure that out.
Yeah.
Because they do ask for an objection or not an objection.
oh, they do.
Yeah,
do.
and just for clarity, I've had in a couple as well in Little Italy areas. so-
Okay, so then through the chair, would the process that currently exists for patio permits and would be applied to parklets be the same where council would approve or object through the chair?
It's, the chairman to council, we weren't planning on adjusting any of our methodology, what we currently do is what we're planning on doing. That's how I've envisioned this program to go in, to move forward with. But yeah, we do, when we do send out for notification, we do end up asking if the council members, approve or disapprove something. Because if council has an objection to a patio or in future the parklets, we want to know why. So because like I said, all of council does know what's going on out there much more than we do. You get all the calls. We get a lot of calls, but you guys, get just as many, if not more. So we have like I said, this is the same process that we have done. That was what we were planning on continuing with. But that's.
Councilman Polinsik has asked if he can have a very brief point just on this topic.
Thank you. Just on this point, once the council for the patio, once the councilman approves it and signs off, it never comes back to us again. That's the part of the problem. It doesn't come back for us for a renewal.
Mr. Knopf, clarification.
Clarification to council, to chairman, to council. That's not true. Whenever we get the renewals, we do the exact same. They weren't previously. That wasn't happening. I just took over this about a year and a half ago.
I would care to differ with you.
And every single time that we get a renewal, we do the exact same process now in terms of sending them to council, to members of council, and then also doing inspections. Like I said, previous to me doing this, that was not the case. It used to be an automatic renewal on everything. What we found was that certain businesses had their patios grow magically during out the year. And so we wanted to make sure that did not happen. So every single time that they do, whether it's a renewal or a new permit, we go through the exact same process. We do the inspections, we send notifications out for council, safety forces, and the whole list of people planning, everyone who, on Cleveland staff who reviews them, all reviews them every single year that we go and get the renewals. Like I said, sometimes I know that there's patios out there that either never been permitted or have not renewed their permits. We're working on trying to police this as much as we can with our staff that we have. But we are working on that to make sure. So there might be organizations that just never renewed them, and therefore that's why you hadn't been notified. But we are working on trying to rectify that situation.
All right, Councilwoman Spencer, please proceed.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So it sounds like the mechanism is in place for council approval, disapproval, and direct notification. So two questions. One is, when the notification is provided, through the chair, when the notification is provided, is there a certain time frame in which council, is it 30 days, is it 15 days? How much time does council have to review we don't want to hold up businesses, but what's the reasonable time frame in which council can express its approval or disapproval?
Chairman, the Councilwoman, how we do it right now is that when we send out the application package to all Cleveland staff members, that is when we also send it, we also have the council member on that. Once I end up going and getting approvals from the various staff, I end up looking at them once a week, once every other week to see who's missing. So who hasn't submitted that, whether that be maybe the council member or someone from public health or whatever. We then send them an email saying, hey, can you please review this? We haven't, had a response. So that's what we end up going and doing. There's not a strict time frame that we end up asking, for members of council to respond back to us. But like I said, once I know that we're ready to go, we send out that just to make sure that we get some sort of response.
Through our chair, Mr. Knopf, it sounds like you have a lot of attention to detail and you're the right person for that job. My next question is, in this piece, in this legislation, this ordinance specifically, is this part about council notification referenced? And if not, why not? Where would it be referenced? And is there a reason it's not directly referenced in the legislation?
Chairman of the council, I know in the ordinance that it is stated in there. I don't know the exact location right this second, but I know that there is a notification clause within there for council. Let me see if I can.
I've just, if we could, I've gave it to Ms. Melnick so that she could take a look.
Okay.
So if you want to proceed to another question while
I
she's
do,
looking.
thank you. And then
we'll
we'll come
follow
back
back
to
up.
notification clause. Thank you. I wanted to clarify through our chair to the administration, if a business is interested in participating in the Parklet program but doesn't have right-of-way in front of their business, for example, they're on the side of the street that doesn't have on-street parking, am I correct to presume that they would not be able to apply for a Parklet permit? I know I've distracted everybody with.
Chairman of the council, that is correct. If they do not have frontage on a street, then they would not be able to go and obtain a patio permit or a parklet permit because they need to have frontage on that street because that's how we've worded it before because we wanted to make sure that someone just isn't throwing something in front of someone else's business.
Let me clarify my question through the chair. In most business districts, there's parking on just one side of the street, or there are areas where there's no parking. If your business wishes to apply for a parklet, but you do not have a parking lane in front of your business, would you be able to apply? I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that not all businesses may be able to take advantage of this program. I want to clarify that.
Chairman and Councilman, that is correct. So if they do not have a parking lane in front of their frontage, that's a full-time parking lane, then they would not be able to participate in the parklet because we're not putting them in traffic lanes at all or even partial traffic lanes. But that's where the whole CDC thing comes into play. Where if they have a business that they think that having outdoor seating would end up helping them, they're on this side, on the south side of the street, there's no parking lane on the south, but on the north side there is, then they can end up going and talking with the CDC and seeing if the CDC would sponsor across the street then, or talk with that business, or, that's where the communication comes into play with them. Does that make sense?
Those conclude my questions for now, Mr. Chair, until we come back to notification.
Thank you so much, Council Lady. And once again, I did give the piece to Ms. Melnick, and she's going to give us a legal opinion in a second, okay? I'm going to end with Councilwoman House, and then Councilman Bishop will end as Chair of Municipal Services with any questions or concerns he has. Councilwoman House.
Thank you. I'm looking on I think this is page 7. It talks about a board of sidewalk appeals. What's that?
Could you respond to that, Mr. Knopf?
Chairman and Councilman, the Board of Sidewalk Appeals has been in effect for a number of years. Mainly, it only deals with citations or violations that are given to a business order concerning sidewalks itself. Like I said, we're expanding their role to go and allow them to be the initial point of appeal process for anyone with the patio or parklet permits, since it does fall into the sidewalk area. So it's already in place. We're just expanding their ability to go and review these also.
Just a follow-up, because I was trying to look for it, right? Because there's nowhere, like I'm looking on the city's website through the chair to the, so there's no information related to this whatsoever. So I was like, this is something new. So that's the one thing. The second thing is, do we have, through the chair, to the team here, do we actually have the written policies of how this new proposed ordinance would work?
Basically, and that's one of the questions I was going to ask, and I want to make sure if I clarify, because do you have like a process? Do you know, it'd be good if you actually show how this is actually operationalized. But I'll let Councilwoman clarify her question, because I think she's a little confused. But I think, how do we have like a process map to understand how it works? But Councilwoman?
Yeah, no, so, and looking through these, there are a lot of decisions, right, that could be made. But again, you have to have an actual rule to say, this is how we would say yay, this is how we would say nay, from a administrative or a policy process. And then this is getting back to one of the, I think, opportunities we have as a city. We got to get to a point where we are having some real standards on what is a yes and what is a no. In my short time here, again, it seems like a lot of yeses and nos are made on very different standards, right? And so it's hard to know how to engage and properly operate when you can go one place and it's a yes, and you go somewhere else and it's a no. And so if you have strong policies, and I know there's always some adjustments to that, but usually if you have some real standards, then people clearly know this is what a yes defines, in this case, the patio expansion, and these things don't qualify, and we really just need to be much more clear on what that looks like. And so that's what I'm trying to get at. Is there a written policy that even guidance, even the thought of like council members, well, I want to approve something, yay or nay, in my neighborhood. My thought is, but what is your yay and nay dependent upon, right? We should have some guidance, on this type of things. Is your yay and nay based upon, oh no, we got 15 complaints, for this business, and so no, because I'm just like, we just got to build a body of backing, so to build confidence in our citizens that we are making decisions that are fair, kind of removing some of the personalities, but we are making decisions that are really based on fairness, and that people are getting a real shot if they want to operate here in our city. But a lot of that times this is missing, and because of conversations I've had with the administration, I would feel much more confident if it is in writing and not just leaving it to chance.
And Councilwoman, I couldn't agree with you more. Basically, what you're talking about are standard operating procedures that really is one of the reasons why we supported the EY initiative, because one of the things that they're supposed to be working with us to do is helping us really define those, so that it's not that people feel that we're doing subjectivity, but that we actually have clear objectivity on how we're actually making decisions. So I totally agree. And for all the directors and all the chiefs, I think that's something that we're looking for, because that's what helps us understand, to Councilwoman Spencer's point and others, how we actually understand where the decision-making points are, what are the criteria and all those things, so that we have a better understanding.
And then just a follow-up.
If you want to,
just follow up. And so where can I find information on this board of sidewalk
Knopf?
appeals?
Chairman,
Where's the information? Like, who serves on it? When do they meet?
Mr. President, on that point,
Councilwoman House,
Yes.
would you allow Councilman Bishop on that point? Councilman Bishop?
yes, Mr. President, to Councilwoman House, I am on the board of Sidewalks Appeal. Quite frankly, I never heard of the Sidewalks Appeal until I was asked to be a board member on there. And I think it's already July. I think I've been serving on that board since probably around December. But I think that was our first case in my time on the board, was probably back in December. Okay?
Yeah.
Disappointed that.
Boards and commissions.
And also, Mr. Chairman, I think we've heard about 5 cases so far through my short period of time on the board.
Right, and so this would bring to the chair, and I guess this could be just a general thing. This brings to mind of the need to assess all boards and commissions for the city of Cleveland to actually see if they are actually necessary. In my opinion, in observing, we have a lot of boards and the commissions that are doing busy work, and a lot of times I think a lot of these things can be revised just through having very strong policy. That's my opinion, but if we don't do an analysis of it, we can't make that determination. So if you say something, you probably sign up for something. So I'll probably be a part of that group that will help to do the revision, and maybe I can find one of these bright college students somewhere that can help us do an analysis.
You were
So
reading my
thank you.
mind, because I was going to say, it sounds like we got another task for you to be a part of.
Thank you.
I totally agree, and I'm a big process guy, so with me, the reason I understand what you're saying is because I almost like to see a as-is, to-be kind of process map. Ms. Chambers knows exactly what I'm talking about. We used to go through some of these exercises before, and I know we're about to go through something similar like that with the EY, the Ernst & Young piece that we invested in through American Rescue Plan Act dollars. So I really encourage us to really get involved, but I definitely hear you, Councilwoman, and I think we could find a way to look at that, because it's a lot of these little small committees. But I do want to also caution us, as always, that a lot of times they were put in place for a reason, and I also like to know when we dismantle something, making sure that we don't have any unintended consequences. But I definitely think you're the person to help us figure that out, because there are a lot of cumbersome committees in City Hall, okay? All right, Mr. Knopf, close, and then I'll go to Councilman Bishop for the closing counsel, and then we'll go to Ms. Melnick for any legal opinions.
Chairman to Council, first, couple of things just to clarify. 505.07, which is part of the proposed changes, that goes and talks about the Board of Sidewalk Appeals. So that's where it gets formed and gives all the information about it, is in 505.07. In terms of the notifications, 513.04C, which is in the packet, goes and talks about notification to council. And then, what was it? 513.11 goes over the rules and allows for the director of capital projects to promulgate rules and regulations, which goes over our application and the various rules and regulations that we use to follow when going in for the approval process for the patios and potentially the parklets.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman Bishop, closing comments from the council side, and then we'll hear from Ms. Melnick, and then we'll entertain any potential amendments.
Yes, Mr. President, I'll be brief. During my meeting with the director, I brought up these very same concerns about council's ability to have oversight and be included on this process. So, Mr. Chairman, I do want to hear, and what I was told is that the law had to weigh in on it. So I do want to hear the law department's take on that. And also, Mr. Chairman, let me just go back and give a little bit more information on the Board of Sidewalks Appeals to Councilwoman House. Councilwoman, the chief responsibility of sidewalks appeal is that when someone is cited for their sidewalk, say for instance, if a business, the Board of Sidewalks go out and cite someone on their sidewalks and say, you have to replace, 100 feet of sidewalk and you have to do it within 30 days. a lot of times the resident or the business owner will come back and say, well, I need more than 30 days and I want a second opinion. So the Board of Sidewalks Appeal is made up of 3 members, myself, Director DeRosa, and the lady from the law department. She's going to be mad at me because I can't call her name right off the bat. But it's 3 members, and we basically go in as a mediator and say, okay, can you give them 180 days instead of 30 days? Or, this part of the sidewalk seems fine, and that part of the sidewalk probably should be replaced. So we're just a mediator, so to speak, to give the resident or business owner a second opinion other than the person who cited this person for those sidewalks. Okay, so I hope that's kind of give you some kind of clarity on the role of the Board of Sidewalks Appeals. But Mr. President, I want to hear the law department's take on the on this piece of ordinance.
Thank you so much. Ms. Melnick.
Good morning, council members, through the council president. I understand there's a question regarding notification and whether it can be the individual council member would have to approve or disapprove the permit application. As Mr. Knob already indicated, the notification provision right now is in section 51304, and the only change that's being proposed to this codified ordinance is really just changing a housekeeping item to public service to capital projects. So this provision has been in the law for several years, and this is the here's the language.
We can't hear her.
Yeah, could you speak into the microphone?
So here's the language that is existing in the codified ordinance as is. No permits shall be issued until the member.
Hold up, is that the broken mic?
Just pull it out of the table. Brian.
See if that works right there. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, let's start again. Good morning, council members.
morning, good
through
morning.
The council president. Okay, regarding notification, first of all, I just want to, as Mr. Knob had pointed out, the notification requirement is in the existing codified ordinance. There's only one change that's really being proposed in that codified ordinances is just a housekeeping item of changing from public service to capital projects. So, as it's in Division C, it says no permit shall be issued until the members of council of the ward affected have been provided with written notice by the Director of Capital Projects and until the expiration of 30 days from the date of notice, unless the 30-day period is expressly waived by the council members in writing. So just to clarify, we have always just required a notification. And I understand there may be a desire for certain council members to want to be able to approve or disapprove. You will see throughout our codified ordinances that we always either provide that council has to be provided notice, or we can change the language for it to be to seek the council members' recommendation on it. The reason why we've never allowed a council member to decide whether any type of permit can be granted is because there is case law in Ohio that's unconstitutional. So City Council speaks as one body, right? An individual member's voice is important, but it can't speak for the body unilaterally. So, and I'll just highlight the language from an Ohio Supreme Court case. And this was dealing with a city ordinance that required a council member approval for a building permit.
Mr. Chairman, and could you speak into the...
Again? Okay.
What we're talking about is interesting.
All right, can we hear this?
She's pulling
now?
it up now. Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
So in this case, the question was whether the grant of permit was conditioned upon the approval by the member of the city council elected from the ward wherein the property is situated. The court ruled that the ordinance improperly delegated the authority as the individual council member is acting as an individual, right? You're not acting as a council, the council body. So they found that that was an illegal delegation of authority to the council member. If you want to be able to approve or disapprove, it needs to come before the whole body.
The whole body.
Not just one council person. That's why we say notice. We can change it to recommendation. The form can be changed. Does councilman recommend approval, disapproval? What are your grounds, right? is that we also want to make sure that they're, we're acting reasonably.
Hold on, everybody. Let her finish the explanation, and then we'll get into questions. We will in a second, but Ms.
And I
Melnick,
would
your
just
question.
like to finish up by, this is not a new issue. This has come up in previous years. And again, we've always said it needs to be a notification to the council member. It can be the council member recommendation, and they can state their grounds for why they want to approve or disapprove it. But if council really wants to have the final say, then it needs to be done through the council as an entity, as a body, because that is how you speak. By passing ordinances, by passing resolutions, you do it as a body, not as an individual council person.
Okay, so just want to, before we go into it, I want to clarify. You said something also that within 30 days, that council would have to respond to within 30 days.
Yes.
An objection, okay? The question that I have about that is, what if we, I'm just giving the most extreme cases. What if council doesn't even get this until like 15 days of the request or something else like that? Is there anything on the administration side that they have to provide it and give that 30-day grace period or anything else like that?
I mean, the ordinance does require that the administration provide the notification, the council has 30 days to act.
Okay.
Unless you waive that.
Okay.
If that communication is not occurring, I think there are administrative steps that can be taken to make sure that does occur. But again, if it doesn't occur and somebody's
Mr.
seeking a
Chairman, on
permit,
the
you
point.
as a body can take action through legislation, right?
Okay, yes. And then just want to make sure that I follow up. Is there any commensurate legislation that is already in place that we may be able to add to this to give the body the authority to approve or disapprove? Do we have any other legislation anywhere else that we can probably use to give the body the ability to authorize this or anything else? Just trying to figure that out.
To the council president, I'm not, well, I mean, there's nothing that I can point to as far as a codified ordinance. It wouldn't be a codified ordinance. It would just be a separate piece of legislation that the council would pass regarding any particular matter. I mean, that's always at your discretion as the body.
Okay. All right. I had Councilman Starr, Councilman Jones, Councilman Polensek, and I think Councilman Harrison had a point. And once again, this one isn't for the 15-minute. We gave everybody the 15-minute one, but if you could just ask Ms. Melnick questions regarding council's authority and the opinion that she just given. Councilman Starr.
Thank you, Council President. My question or my point I would like to make a reference is, if it's unconstitutional through the Ohio Supreme Court, is there something that we can do to inquire to make sure it has to go through the legislative process? Meaning it cannot be sent over saying, hey, put my name on this piece of legislation and approve it without even having it been vetted by that council person whose area is in before it can even get brought to the table or anything like that. Is there something that we can put in writing to ensure that it goes through that process? Because sometimes you get here at the committee or you get here and people are introducing things, throwing your name on stuff, and you haven't even vetted that process, but basically saying, hey, the administration said this is something they wanted to do within their relationship that they may have with someone else, as opposed to it going through the actual legislative process to ensure that we do our due diligence so it can go through and get passed through this body as a collective unit, as opposed to, meaning if it's something that didn't look good in Ward 3, Ward 4, Ward 5, if those council members haven't said anything that they want to have it introduced or have it go through the legislative process, then it shouldn't be going through the legislative process. But it can be introduced, but that don't mean it has to be vetted or go through that process. You know, everybody is entitled to the process, but they are not entitled to the outcomes.
Ms. Melnick, did you have any response to Councilman Starr's question?
To the chairperson, or to the councilman through the chair, I mean, I guess I would just like to say this. I mean, again, the section C is specific as far as no permit shall be issued until notification has been provided. And so that we want to stick to recommendation at best. If otherwise you Otherwise, for permits to be issued to give the body action, it would be through individual pieces of legislation, which I just don't think, as a practical matter, you're going to want every single permit for a patio or parklet to require a separate piece of legislation. If you find out after passing this legislation that maybe something isn't working, maybe, I know there's been discussion about rules and regulations, you as a council can come back, and if there's something needs to be changed in the codified ordinance to put more specific parameters about which type of patios or parklets to restrict more specifically where they're to be placed, or if you want to determine the parameters of the structures and stuff like that, you can do that as a body by amending the codified ordinances and putting those provisions in the legislation.
Councilman Starr, one more point, then I'll go to Councilman Jones.
One second. I like that. So I turn to this body to understand. Everybody remember the gotcha? Imagine them still being open, and they going through this process, and next thing you know, they receive the permits, and all of us got to deal with all the calls about the shootings, the crime, the violence, when we couldn't even vet it before they could even get that permit. So I just want to remind you of some areas, some locations will be entitled to go through this process, and we don't even be able to do our due diligence to be able to make sure it is something that is approved.
Thank you. Councilman Jones, and then I think I have Councilman Hairston and Palencia. So Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. What we have is, I'm not really caught up into, just for clarification and laying the foundation here, about the subject matter totality into itself, but want to express, Mr. Chairman, the significance of what we're doing here in terms of setting precedent. What I'd like to ask the lawyer for the city of Cleveland, Mrs. Melnick, can you provide for us this ruling? Is this a matter of state law that's been put in place, or is this a matter of case law where there was an actual lawsuit brought and this was dealt in the Supreme Court? If you can give me clarification there for starters.
Yes, through the chairperson to Councilman Jones. The language that I was reading from is from an Ohio Supreme Court case, Northern Boiler Company versus David et al. It's a 1952 case. But it's an old case, but that doesn't, it's still legal precedent in the state of Ohio. And I would, again, would like to, just for clarification, our precedent through our codified ordinance has been consistent with this case ruling. Again, if you search through the codified ordinances, you will see that it's the council members can be provided notification. There may be a section in that requires a recommendation before a permit, but it's not giving one individual council member a chance to decide whether a permit is or is not granted.
So, Ms. Melnick, if you allow me, Councilman, on that point.
Yes, Mr.
So,
Chairman.
as is right now, let's say we as a council have a plat, let's say a plat or something like that, that we either recommend or don't recommend. Because I think what I want to make sure that we don't confuse is that most of these things we do vote on as a body. But the recommendation, as for example, whenever the first thing I ask when we do legislation, Councilman Starr, are you in approval? Councilman Bishop, did you vet this as municipal services? So my point of what I'm trying to say is that we already have some processes that we are getting recommendation from that individual council person that is, and that committee to be vetted, and then we actually vote on it as a body. So is any difference with this one than what we do with some of those other pieces like that?
To the chairperson. So remember, we're dealing here with a permit application, right? So the permit application would have to be routed through several city officials that are designated in the legislation and notification. So you're just dealing with the permit. The permit itself doesn't need to come back. to get council approval. Where the situation you're discussing is recommendation on legislation that's pending. So
Right.
this is a codified ordinance that allows for permits to be issued. If a permit application is made and it's signed off and recommendations are received. So it is different than what you're describing.
Okay, all right, Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was good to kind of get an idea. This is a 1952 piece, and it's not state legislation. So, Mr. Chairman, as we have seen in the congressional levels, and we've seen in state legislatures all across the continent of the United States of America, especially when there is one-party rule, they make the rules. And if there's an issue where it's unconstitutional, they just let the leaves fall where they may. And if there's a constitutional argument or a legal situation where a business or whomever feels affected, they just take their stuff to the Supreme Court. So here in this particular proposition, our colleagues have laid out examples. Anthony Harrison laid out several examples. Richard Starr initially put out the same examples, similar examples, where council, and just to lay the foundation, each representative sitting here at this table represents about 25,800 people. I border up against Maple Heights with 23,000 people, and they have one mayor and several council members. I also border against Warrensville as an example. I'm only going to give these two examples. I got 4 or 5 different neighbors around me. And they have 14,000 people, 9 council members, and a mayor. We, technically speaking, sitting here at this table, are the decision makers for 25,800 people. We're lucky and blessed when we do have the mayor come into our neighborhood. But the city is vast and it is wide, and we have to make decisions that are in the best interest of our jurisdiction in terms of territory. And so, Mr. Chairman, my argument is the same argument. I would see the promotion of an amendment that council has to approve. Yes or no if there's going to be parklets out into our communities. This is a piece that could be hazardous to our community, can be detrimental in so many different ways to speak. There's an unclear concept or proposition about what will be allowed, what will not be allowed, how far it can go out into the street. Some of these parameters are not clear, it hasn't been made clear. So I would err on the side of caution as having that be a part of our outlet to deal with some issues that may have a negative impact in our respective territories. So I know I have at least 4 members that certainly support this already, to have an amendment that it's upon the councilmatic approval within their respective geographical territories.
Thank you. Councilman Polinsik, and then Councilman Harrison to wrap us up.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues, Ms. Melnick. This case you alluded to was pertaining to a building permit. What we're discussing at the table is the public right-of-way.
Right.
There's a difference, building permit versus the public right-of-way. So, if you feel that even in light of the fact that it's within the public right-of-way, that the issue would have to come before the whole council for us to submit, just like we do on a liquor permit.
Right.
I have absolutely no problem doing that. But the point I'm making is that council members must be given a right to approve or disapprove. That's the point I made earlier in today's discussion. For someone to apply for this structure to be placed out in front of a business without the concurrence of the council person is going to lead to all kind of problems. So we want to keep order, we want to keep control in our commercial districts, that we want some uniformity, as we've been talking at the table. So I'm for, Mr. Chairman, at whatever time it's required, because I made the amendment initially, I'm more than prepared to restructure that to make sure that we do have, that there is councilmatic approval on that.
Okay.
But your case that you brought up was a building permit, not public right-of-way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let's hear from Councilman Hairston, and then I'm going to wrap up with the 3 amendment requests that I've heard, and then I'm going to pivot to the people who I have heard would like to make those amendments. So, Councilman Hairston, last comment, and then I'll sum up the 3 amendments that I've heard, and then we'll determine if we want to move forward from there. Councilman.
Thank you. Mr. President, I'll be brief. As Councilman Lindsay said, the information we heard from the law department is regarding the building permit, not the public right-of-way. And I hear you loud and clear about the individual council member making that unilateral decision themselves. And I think about when we make changes, when we receive liquor permit requests, or we do honorary street renamings. Council member has input, yay or nay, and then it goes to through our legislative process, through the first reading and passage, intro and passage process. So my thought, Mr. Chairman, is that we require in this ordinance that before issuing the permit shall require legislative approval, and what the legislative approval can be is just as we do liquor permits, we do honorary street renamings, we do other situations, other ordinances or resolutions that come to us can go through our introduction and passage instead of going through a full committee process or instead of going through a 3-reading process, that we do a intro and passage on pieces as we do with liquor objections, renewals, honorary street renamings, and so forth. And so that's all from me, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you so much. And that's I'm going to actually repeat that, so hold that because I want to make sure we go over it. Here are the 3 amendments, and here are the sponsors that I've heard for the 3 amendments. 1, I've heard striking Section F. I'm going to ask for Councilman McCormick to proffer that amendment and his background around that. Number 2 is uniformity. That's something that Councilman Polinsik has kind of gathered and said is very critical, as well as Councilman Joseph Jones. And then last but not least is the appropriate language for approval by the legislative body as per the recommendation going through the council legislative process. Those are the 3 amendments that I heard. And I'm going to ask Anthony Hairston if he could give the property amendment for the council approval based on your feedback with Ms. Melnick. So if I missed an amendment, please tell me, but those are the 3 as the chair that I have captured in this deliberation. Okay, so first up is Councilman McCormick about striking Section F. Can you please, an attorney, are you prepared to hear the amendments that are being proffered? I am. Okay, Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, the 20-second background on this is I believe that the administration and council should govern the public right-of-way decisions pertaining to these types of treatments. So understand this amendment would not apply to private property that a business owner might have. Again, in Section F1 and 2, the requirement of a letter of support from a private property owner for the use of public land, I believe, is inappropriate in these occasions. Once again, I think that decision should be made by the administration and council, not a private property owner regarding the public right-of-way. So with that, Mr. President, I move to strike Section F in its entirety, so Section F1 and 2 in its entirety.
So I have a motion on the table to strike Section F and 1 and 2 in its entirety. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, second that.
Councilman Jones has made a second to that. Do we have any, it's been moved and seconded, or is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Councilman Hairston.
I'd just like to say that I agree with Councilman McCormick that the decision should be left up to the administration and council on what and how we issue these parklets and permits.
All right, any other discussion? Councilwoman Spencer.
A point of clarification, which section are we referring to?
Councilman McCormick, can you repeat that section?
It's F under a certain section.
My apologies. So under 513.03, application for permits, Section F, numbers 1 and 2.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so any other discussion? Seeing no other discussion, all in favor? On that motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Second motion, Councilman Polinsik, I'm going to punt this one to you, and if Councilman Jones would like to have clarity about uniformity and how and where you see that fitting into this and what that language sounds like, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm assuming, and my own colleagues of the administration, I believe it would be under section 513.06 permits. Under section, I believe under section C, because I'm trying to figure out where we would put uniformity in there as it pertains to the structure itself. Unless someone from the administration would point out another section, but I'm assuming that's where it would go.
Mr. Knopf or Mr. Swatowski, any recommendations on where the uniformity clause can accurately fit within this? This is the administration's opportunity to weigh in on where you believe this could actually possibly fit.
Chairman, the council, I'd say 51307 under the requirements and conditions of permit would probably be the best location because that delves into more specifics concerning what the requirements are with the permit itself. So I'd probably maybe add a letter N as in Nancy, stating, I'm not sure exactly what the specific language that you want in there at this point in time.
You're saying 513.07?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just, and again, I'm trying to just throw, there must be uniformity as it pertains to the structures, to appearance. And in some of these cities, it is a requirement as well that the structure itself, that there be landscaping on the units. As you can see in Sylvania, they required landscaping on them.
On a point?
Plants.
Councilman Polinsik, Councilman Slife would like to get a point on that. Would you allow him that point?
Yes, I would.
Councilman Slife, on that point.
Thank you, and I agree that it would be aesthetically pleasing for these to have, continuity, essentially. I'm wondering, the question for the administration, what is I know the planning department has kind of like a streetscape design review committee. I'm wondering what is the best way to essentially enact this? Is it through MOCAP or is it by planning coming up with design guidelines or the streetscape design review committee or something like that? Like how can we tap into kind of existing approvals, not to delay it, but so that we're not having to reinvent the wheel?
I was thinking the same thing.
Yep.
Councilman Polinsik.
I would concur with that. So I'm just trying to figure out how to put that in an amendment form. Does this law department have any suggestions?
Real quick, I'm going to go to Mr. Knopf and then Ms. Melnick.
Yeah.
Mr. Knopf and then Ms. Melnick.
Chairman of the council, there is no streetscape committee anymore with planning. That's been the committee called PetBot, which I ended up creating about a year and a half ago with Commissioner Mavick and members of planning, has kind of taken over that spot and expanded much greater. Planning right now does go and review all the patios, planning/landmarks. So in terms of uniformity, like I said, at this point in time, we don't know what else is, everything that's out there. Someone might have a new design that comes out that we end up liking, better than something that's currently available. And I guess I just I want to make sure that the businesses aren't handcuffed to a particular design at this point if we don't know what else might be out there that might be better.
No, and I think that Councilman Polinsik is saying the same thing.
Right.
We want to give them flexibility, but you opened up this conversation with what we're all afraid of. When we have those Jersey barriers, and I had those Jersey barriers on Larchmere, even in the midst of COVID, people would say, who put those ugly barriers out there in the middle of the streets? So we want to have where we don't just have one group that's putting, as Councilman Casey said, the flea market kind of look on the
Right.
front, and then the next guy has just these beautiful flowers and beautiful landscaping. So we wanted to, Councilman Slipe's point, have something that gives uniformity, but also has maybe city planning, if it's already in place, the ability to, police the uniformity, which is what I think you're trying to do anyway.
Yeah,
and if I'm hearing you correctly, you gave a recommendation to Councilman Polensky.
Yeah, somehow that the administration would develop uniformity design concepts to be presented to council for approvals. There's got to be a process in here. As the council president indicated, those Jersey barriers look like something out of North Korea. We don't
Right.
want that in our neighborhoods. We want something that's pleasant and pleasing, but again, addresses, as Councilman Casey and others has pointed out, Councilman Jones, we don't want to have this hodgepodge on none of our commercial districts. We want uniformity. We want something that looks good, that addresses what that business is attempting to do for our community.
Ms. Melnick wanted to follow up with a legal side on this. If you had anything, Ms. Melnick, a recommendation?
Through the chairperson to Councilman Polensky, I do agree with Rob Knob that you can put a new division in, or I'd like to point out, sorry, is this better? Is this better?
She gonna pull it up 'cause the
Okay,
mics are giving
can you
me a
hear
kind of-
this?
Yeah, that's
Okay, sorry about
not
that.
working well over there.
Because you're good.
We need to invest
Okay,
in new mics.
sorry about
Go
that,
ahead.
Councilman Jones. Okay, so as Rob Knapp had indicated, you can create a new division, and there, alternatively, there's a section 51311 regarding regulations. It says that the director may promulgate rules and regulations not inconsistent with this chapter, establishing procedures for the issuance and any requirements and conditions of the permit. I worked with Rob Knopp on this piece of legislation, and the rules and regulations were going to need to be updated. So perhaps what you can do is make an amendment to provide that the rules and regulations shall require, for uniformity in landscaping, and that those rules and regulations need to be provided to council before they're adopted.
And be approved by council?
It's up to the council to decide
Okay,
the amendment.
I'll
yes.
buy that. right
So
there.
if you could repeat that.
Let her repeat
Because
that.
what she said. What she said. And I want to listen closely because Councilman Hairston was up on deck too, and I want to make sure this may be an opportunity to combine and collapse the two to accomplish both of what we're looking for. So if you can repeat that.
Sure, and just to be clear, I'd be happy to put together a draft amendment and have whichever council members take a look at it, before it gets attached to the legislation. But I'm proposing an amendment to section 51311 that the rules, and something to the effect that the rules and regulations shall provide for uniformity and landscaping shall contain landscaping provisions, and the rules and regulations need to be submitted to council for approval before they become effective.
Okay,
Something to that effect.
So that is the amendment that is proffered on behalf of Councilman Polensky, and I dare to say, is there a second? Is there a second to that amendment? Okay, so that amendment has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilman Joseph Jones.
Yeah, because here's the issue, Mr. Chairman, and this is to add on to, and I appreciate our attorney, Mrs. Melnick, propositioning and being a part of this whole piece of legislation. But when we talk about uniformity, we got to get, one of the things I would suggest is that these parklets are extensions to the sidewalks. And we talked about the issue of safety. So as a suggestion, we should talk about what the platform allows for. And having systems where there's railings or enclosures that are protecting the residents and from the street and the surrounding parking spaces. We should also have in there traffic safety protections to reduce the potential for auto-related damage. So how we design this, how it looks is important. We should also have in there, and part of the clause is what type of furnitures that can be included within these fixtures, and what type of fixtures should be established around there as relates to uniformity. We should also talk about what type of materials should and could not be used, and I'll give you some written recommendations of what I mean by that. And then in terms of maintenance, access, drainage, all of those things need to be taken in consideration. We should not have systems or platforms that are potentially doing damage to our streets. So when we talk about our municipal jurisdictions as elected officials, I'm concerned about what that would mean if we're putting or we're allowing for people who have storefronts who want to have these parklets, what potential damage is going to mean to the actual street, and making sure that there are systems that are put in place, and there's many options when you look across the continental scape of the United States where you don't have to bolt them down, but there can be some type of platform put in place. So I'll send that information to the council, as well as send it to the administration, that these should be some serious considerations as we talk about the proposition of uniformity.
So Councilman Polensek and Councilman Hairston, do you feel that this amendment that has been proffered by Ms. Melnick addresses both the approval process and the uniformity clause that you and Councilman Polensek has put forward?
Yes.
Councilman
I don't
Hairston,
think so.
your thoughts?
No, I think
you
that.
still want to go further? with
Yeah,
it?
I think that only addresses to a point.
Okay.
The issue.
All right, so then any other discussion on the amendment put forth that Councilman Polensek is putting forth? Seeing no other discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, Councilman Hairston, approval process and councilman recommendation, but keep in mind something very important that Ms. Melnick said, which if I gathered anything from the 1952 Supreme Court opinion, is that a council member may not have the authority to do it itself, but the council body as a whole has the ability to vote and approve or disapprove of something. So keep that in mind. But Councilman Hairston, any recommendations on your approval process?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we've heard today and from our law department, that individual council member does not have the ability to approve or object to an issuance of one of the patio parklet permits by the Department of Capital Projects. So my recommendation is in section 513.04 is to include language that shall read that before issuance of any permit, the issue, well, I don't know, you can write it the way you believe it should be written, but that there should be, the permit shall require, issues of a permit shall require legislative approval. So what that does is, as we treat liquor permits, as we treat honorary street renamers, as we treat other ordinances or resolutions that come before us, that we pass those on a intro and passage as we do currently on other aspects.
Ms. Melnick, you have a point on that, and then I do have a follow-up to question once that, but I'll tell you what, do you want to clarify this point on his amendment before we actually second it? If you could, okay. Ms. Melnick, go ahead.
Yes, through the council, through the chairperson to the councilman. So I just wanted there to be some clarification, because this legislation was really before council because we're adding parklets, right? So do you want, but this chapter applies to patios as well. So is the amendment pertains just to parklets, or is it patios and parklets? Because that's an important distinction.
Councilman Hairston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Mrs. Melnick, in my opinion, I think it applies to both. And I say that because, trends are changing, right? Neighborhoods are changing, trends are changing. So you're getting a lot more outdoor activities, a lot more folks who are eating outside, who are taking advantage of what we had to do when COVID existed, when people couldn't be indoors. And so because people have liked those concepts, you're getting more of that, right? And I think, because of all the issues that we've heard today by council members and the reasons why, I think this should apply to not only parklets but also patios. So regardless of the permit, it shall require legislative approval before a permit is issued. I don't see any reason why this should delay anything. Again, we meet every Monday night except for the summertime, but we have special council meetings in July and August. If we are not requiring this to go through the committee process before it comes back to council for approval, I see no way that this is delaying that process that we currently have.
All right. So does the attorney have the amendment put forth? Okay, Councilman Hairston, I'm going to ask you to say one more time, and then I'm going to ask for a second to his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So before any issuance of patio and parklet permits, that legislative approval shall be required.
Okay, so the amendment has been moved and seconded. Do we have any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Jones.
I'm not in disagreement, but I'm just unclear with the initial proposition of, and I understand it from what has been said, but this is a 1952 law that's being applied here. My question is, Mr. Chairman, to Mrs. Melnick, what was the particulars? Why was this? Because that's important to understand.
Through the chairperson to the councilman, to be honest, it's been a while since I looked at this case, right? Got called up to come up to council. So it was regarding a building permit. And I understand the Councilman Polensek pointed out, yes, they are factually different. The case dealt with the building permit. Here we're dealing with the public right-of-way, which is city property that we hold in trust for the public. But the legal principle is the same. I mean, the legal principle is can one council member unilaterally speak and for the council as a whole? And the answer is no. Council needs to speak as a body.
Yeah, and if I could, I do want to take one moment to interject because I'm glad you're getting a point for clarification on that. That's why I think Councilman Hairston's amendment being proffered is so important, because what he's saying is that the body would now do it. And we are not the administration. We are not the executive branch. Our job is to set the rules, as you always say. And that's what we're doing now by this is coming through the body. And that's where we think we can put this amendment forward based on what Councilman Hairston just put forth.
And the only reason why I brought that up, Mr. Chairman, for clarification, because there's other aspects where we do make decisions and just thinking about the proposition of time, right? So how fast, and the question would be, if you just had the administration make the decision, or if council had the one vote scenario in place, because again, I'm a respecter of how you want to do things in terms of uniformity, but yet at the same time, I have the mentality that if it is your elected jurisdiction in these particular cases, other than building and housing issues, I think this is a stretch to some degree, because, and here's where the stretch comes in. You are using the public's right of way. So if there was the proposition, Mr. Chairman, where it's dealing with a issue of someone's particular building or getting the permit to add on, I understand that. But there can be the also dual argument, because you're moving into the public zone, into the streets, a matter of safety and other issues. It's sort of gray to me in that area. So I would love to get, Mr. Chairman, if Mrs. Melnick can send that to me so I can look into it, because I'm quite sure that this may be a part of ongoing issues moving forward by using the same law. So I would love to get familiar with that piece. And I have no unreadiness on Mr. Harrison's motion. The only thought process here was that if we want to move a project really quick, would this slow that process down? And if we had just a minimum yes or no from an email from an elected official for a parklet scenario or a patio scenario, that to me seems a lot faster and a lot quicker than going through the body of the whole. So that was just my only unreadiness in that respect. But because I don't, and I have not had the opportunity to review that. I don't have a real objection at this space and time to the proposition that's been put forth.
Okay. Ms. Melnick, did you or anybody else have anything? If not, I think there's an amendment that's been moved and seconded. Seeing no other discussion. Don't move. It's the amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. That being said, ordinance number 704-2023 as amended stands approved.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask my name be added to it.
Can we add Councilman Polinsik's name to 704-2023? Anyone else on council would like to be added to this? Can we, would anybody in objection of all council members being added to this piece of legislation? No objections, please add all council members to 704-2023. Please sign on. I will caution everybody, they said this averaged about 66 permits, which means that we're going to really have to be diligent to make sure we move those through committee, to Councilman Jones' point, so that we're not holding anything up as we move forward. So we'll make sure.
Mr. Chair, as a point of clarification, they won't go through the committee. They will be treated as we do liquor permits and other things.
Right. Got you. Okay. Thank you, sir. All right. Thank you. Next up is ordinance number 705-2023 by Council Members Spencer, Bishop, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance giving consent to the City of Cleveland to the Director of Transportation for the State of Ohio to construct the ramp safety improvement project at West Boulevard and Interstate 90 and authorizing agreements. Mr. Swatowski.
Thank you, Chair. ODOT will arrange for the preparation of construction plans and specifications, including engineering reports, and for supervision and administration of the construction costs, and contribute 100% of the eligible costs. The ramp safety improvement project within the City of Cleveland includes enhancements to pavement markings, signage, new roadway features, updated signalization. The roadway features consist of ADA ramps, curb extensions, median islands, and improved curb radii. The signalization consists of upgraded vehicular and pedestrian signals. These enhancements are part of ODOT's ongoing effort to improve pedestrian safety on or adjacent to highways within the state. This was in Ward 11 for Council Member Danny Kelly. Briefed him about this yesterday. He had a question, wanted to know if the ramp will be closed. Yes, it will, and the traffic will be diverted to West 41st and West 44th. It will be a relatively short diversion, about a couple months.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that. I will first go to Councilman Bishop with Municipal Services on 705.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I recommend this for passage.
Thank you. Councilman Kelly, do you have any commentary on 705, 2023 West Boulevard ramp project?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Yeah, this has been needed for a long time. I think probably that ramp 990 might have been done in 1979, which is actually 44 years ago. And the one house in particular, when you come off the eastbound ramp at 90, has a guardrail there, has been smashed 44 times. The house next to it, 27. They've gone into the porches and the front living rooms. They're currently just fixed the porch up to the one on the left. This August, they're going to fix the porch up again. So this is something that's been needed for quite a long time. And definitely, I appreciate the body going ahead with this. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Councilwoman Spencer?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I simply want to note that as it currently stands, I'm listed as a sponsor of this ordinance. It should be obviously Councilman Kelly. I think that was just a typo because this is located in Councilman Kelly's ward. So ordinance 705-2023, I should be removed as a sponsor and Councilman Kelly should be added to the ordinance. And I also, while I have the mic, want to applaud Councilman Kelly for his hard work on this issue. It's in a very close to Ward 15, and I know that residents have really been suffering, and so Councilman Kelly has been on this. So congratulations, Councilman.
Thank you, and I want to commend Councilman Kelly hitting the ground running on this as well. I know that this has always been a hot topic and long overdue. My experience of being around this city, I know that this has always been very important to the people in that area. So thank you so much. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 705-2023 stands approved. Thank you. I think that's all the pieces for capital projects.
Got two more.
622 and
622, that's in Public Works, and 661?
Yes.
Okay, that was in Public Works for some reason. Okay, let's go ahead and hear those real quick before we go to economic development, because I do have two pieces with guests here. So let me find 662 and 661.
622 and 661.
622. Hold on 1 second, if you could. 620, 660, 622 and 661, right? Correct. All right. First is ordinance number 622-2023 by council members Bishop and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance determining the method of making the public improvement of constructing, rehabilitating, renovating, replacing, or otherwise improving public facilities, buildings, and other similar structures, including site improvements and appurtenances, and authorizing the Director of Public Works or Capital Projects as appropriate to enter into one or more public improvement contracts for the making of the improvement, enter into one or more professional services and other contracts needed to implement the improvement, to apply for and accept grants and gifts, and authorizing the direct employment of the necessary labor for the Department of Public Works and Office of Capital Projects. Ms. Chambers?
Yep, and I will pass this on to Carter Edmonds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning. These two pieces of legislation, 622 and 661, are the two annual operating legislation that allow us to perform the majority of the work that we do for the city. 622, the first one that we're going to consider, is the public facilities improvements, after which we'll consider 661, which is specific to recreation bonds. This authorizes the use of 2023 general obligation bonds for public facilities projects. The total estimated cost of the projects that we're enumerating here in the legislative summary is $9,459,000. And I'm going to start to walk through some of these projects. You may be familiar with them, but I wanted to make sure that everyone has a clear understanding of what these projects are. The first on the list is the annual on-call professional services that we utilize for a variety of projects throughout the city. These allow us to avail ourselves of design professionals in a variety of disciplines that supplement the work that we do and allow us to execute projects efficiently. The disciplines that we are able to avail ourselves of through this include not just architectural and mechanical and electrical and structural engineering, but also landscape design, civil engineering, testing, geotechnical, cost estimating, building commissioning. It's a pretty extensive list, and this lets us work with, quite honestly, some of the best firms in the city to do this work for us. These are typically the kind of projects that for which we need some design assistance, but are not large enough to warrant their own RFP process. An example of some of the ones on a recent contract include the assessment of the Rockefeller Greenhouse and Grounds, structural assessments of Gateway East Garage, air conditioning for Fire Station 1, sewers and drains for Fire Station 23, code-required peer reviews for things like Fire Station 26, the water retention issue at the West 65th retaining wall, things like that, very much what you would expect for on-call services. That's the first item under public facilities. The second item is what we call soft costs for Fire Station 26. As we've mentioned here before, there are the hard construction costs. That's everything under the contract with the construction contractor themselves. There's also soft costs associated with construction projects. That includes, in this case, things like fixtures, furniture, equipment. You can imagine there's a lot of specialized equipment in a fire station, IT, security, and public art is part of that as well, which is also a code-required cost. We already have the hard costs under contract. We have a contract, we have a permit, we have a notice to proceed. If you go by on Kinsman by East 90th, you'll see there is equipment starting to go on site. And our first actual construction job meeting on site is tomorrow. So this is a project underway, and this is the soft costs associated with that. The next item is a fire station modernization program. Just to be clear, this is not a physical condition assessment. We've already done that. That's one component of this. This is more analogous to the Parks and Rec master plan that's currently underway. So this will require a team of specialized consultants that will look at code compliance of the facilities, current best practices for fire stations. They will incorporate physical condition assessments. They'll also be looking at level of service and working together with the Division of Fire on modeling level of service and fire station safety and design itself. So that will provide us a roadmap over the next several years for fire station system modernization, again, analogous to what we're doing with the Parks and Rec master plan right now. The next item is the fire station female facilities phase 3. We've already conducted 2 phases of I believe it's 7 or 8 fire stations where we've modified the facility to accommodate any mixture of male-female firefighters. As you're probably aware, the old model of fire stations was essentially like a squad bay where everyone would have their bunks. Obviously, that's not current best practice today, and this is also pursuant to a PERP requirement. So this is phase 3. It's already been designed. It's ready to go out to bid. This is another example of something where we did the design, but we were able to utilize on-call services for the engineering. This would include fire stations 4, 7, 13, 17, 24, 30, and 33. This is phase 4. This is not the last phase. This is phase 3. It's not the last phase. Phase 4 and the future ones will also be coordinated with the fire station modernization program. Some of the stations that we've done an initial assessment of just don't have room physically in the building or on the site to easily modify them for a new dormitory situation. So that'll be coordinated with the overall modernization program. The last item on this list is the next phase of the Ridge Road Transfer Station improvements. This includes essentially 2 components. One is a OEPA required interceptor at the stormwater outfall. So that's something that we're required to do, and also a continuation of the repairs to the various concrete slabs and interior tipping walls that are part of the ongoing projects there. As you can imagine, those take a lot of abuse. If you've ever been out there on the site while they're operating, there's a lot of kinetic energy going on there. So that's the outline of these projects. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. First of all, Councilman Bishop, do you have anything to add to this? And then I'll move to Councilman McCormick.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, I talked this over with the Director of Capital Projects, and I recommend this for passage. But I do want to note that to the Department, Capital Projects, that going forward in the future, if we have anything involving with the GO bonds, could we please have this? We don't want to do this in the summer session. We want to do this in our sessions that we are in what I want to say in a session, okay? But doing this over the summer is, I think, is inappropriate, Mr. Chairman. So I want to ask the Department of Capital Projects and the Department of Public Works, anything involving GO bonds, to please, we can get it done before or after the summer session. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, and I echo that and can agree with him more. Really, the summer session, we do committee as a whole. These things should be vetted. We should make sure that it goes through the committee process. And the reason that I'm, supportive today is because I know that we're dealing with some time-sensitive things. But one of the things that we've talked with some of the chiefs in the administration is that we really need to do a better job of making sure that we forecast what we need need to vet in advance. So I agree with Councilman Bishop that we'd rather do that in the full session and not try to do it as a cleanup during summer, because it doesn't give us a fair opportunity to really do a deep dive. There's probably about 2 or 3 pieces of legislation that I didn't move forward in this session because it hasn't been through committee and it needs to be vetted. But this one, I allowed, Councilman Bishop relieved it, but it's imperative that these kind of things, especially when it's dealing with GO bonds, that we actually take it through committee, okay? Councilman,
To the chair, noted
yes.
and understood. And we are currently publishing the 3-year capital plan, so we will be prepared to have those discussions much earlier in the next few years.
Thank you, appreciate it. Councilman Bishop, anything else before I go to the next couple of speakers? Okay, I had Spencer Polinsik McCormick.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm not a member of Municipal Services. However, I was happy to sit in when this preliminary discussion was held around the GO bond items with the Municipal Services Committee. At that time, it appears that under the public facilities line item, there were almost 14 million in bonding requests, and this has been reduced to just less than, so 9.5 million. So 2 questions through the chair. The first is just the reason for that change. And then the second would be, does this mean that there is room in other categories of upcoming legislation related to GO bonds to have bonding capacity for other projects, since it looks like this particular bucket, for lack of a better word, is gone down?
Mr. Edmond?
Through the chair to the council member, yes, we were asked to reduce our request due to the bonding capacity. I'm not aware if that means that bonding capacity is being used elsewhere, or if just we were beyond what we were able to ask for. So a lot of those items have been deferred to the next year or the next couple of years on our capital request.
Mr. Edmond, you want to respond again? Go ahead, respond again if you want to.
Well,
Councilwoman, did you want to?
yeah, so I think through the chair, I might want to, I want to request assistance from policy and research. I think it's important that council understands, it's our understanding that the city has a bonding capacity of about 62.5 million annually, and including the cost of issuance at 63.5 million annually. So if there's any change to our bonding capacity this year overall, we absolutely need to know that, what the reasons would be for reduced bonding capacity. So that's pretty urgent. My hope would be that there could be changes, that bonding capacity is not reduced, and that in fact other projects may be getting additional funds in other categories. We have not heard all pieces of legislation as it relates to the expenditures for GO bonds. And I'll come back to that in a second, but I think I don't think it has, I don't have any hesitation with passing 622, 2023, but I think there's a bigger question about what's going on with our bonding capacity.
Sure. Mr. Edmond, and then I will tell you that Joe and I are in the process of engaging Chief Abu Nama, because I think this council needs a briefing on that and some other financial issues. And then I do have some other things that I want to talk to you through that I think is taking place as well. But I don't know for sure until I get clarification.
So through the chair to the council member, just to be clear, and I cannot speak for finance, but I have not been told that our bonding capacity has been reduced. And if I gave that impression, that's not what I meant to say. We, as the Division of Architecture and Site Development, were asked to reduce our request within the context of a much larger general bonding request. And I know that, for example, all the E&C work comes out of that same bucket. So we received a request to reduce our number, and so we prioritized all of our projects from the most urgent down, and then it was cut off at that level.
Great, and
I hope that's helpful.
Council President, I look forward to that briefing. I think, sounds like we're due, and
Yeah.
I look forward to following your lead on hearing from the chief.
Yeah, Joe and I are going to be bringing him in to have that conversation, and I think that's where we'll get more answers about that. And there's another thing that I do want to talk to you about because I want to make sure I get some clarification on what you're talking about.
Great.
Okay.
And may I add one more thing, Mr. Chair, while I have the floor?
Sure.
So it's my understanding that, generally speaking, we pass 5 pieces of legislation related to bonding expenditures, right? The 5 different categories. So we're hearing 2 today. 3 we'll be hearing presumably in August or whenever. I concur with Councilman Bishop's statement that we don't want to be doing this in the summer, so that's good. But I just wanted to say that, be on the record, I know I've sent an email about this, but when it comes to the road and bridge bonds category, I wanted, with my hat of the Urban Forestry Commission on, I want to make sure that before this comes to the table, I have a chance to speak with the administration about the urban forestry pieces specifically. So I'd like to meet with you ahead of time. I know it's not in the 2 pieces today, so I'm just being on the record in regards to future upcoming legislation for bonding as it relates to urban forestry. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Councilman Polinsik and then Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable colleagues. I'll be very brief. I just want to concur with with Chair Bishop and you as it pertains to these capital projects coming before the entire committee. Councilman Bishop does a good job chairing that committee. They deep dive on this stuff, and to be hearing these types of pieces in summer session, I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it. I think the council president hit right on the head. You've had more than sufficient time to bring this stuff before the committee. Committee chair does a good job overseeing this, and again, I'm just saying this in general. Big ticket items should not be coming before us in a summer session. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much, Councilman Polinsik. Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no objection to this piece. I'm curious on the Ridge Road piece, various site and drainage repairs. Have we addressed the break room issues, ceiling break room issues, as well as some of the other problems like the door for the station and the locker room? So for our folks that work at Ridge, in the locker room and break room, we're in real tough shape in bathrooms. Have we addressed those? Are those in this list, or have they already been addressed?
Through the chair to the council member, I've been out there. I've seen it myself, so I'm very much aware of it. It's not in this package, but it is in our capital plan.
Okay. Do we have a timeline a rough timeline on when those will be implemented? And again, the folks that work hard to collect our waste every day have to use those facilities. So I'm just.
I believe that's on the 2024 request for Ridge Road.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, and maybe to Councilman Bishop, maybe a follow-up on this. The men and women that work hard to, pick up our trash, the facilities that they're operating in are subprime, to say the least. So I just think we should continue to work with the administration to make sure those facilities are adequate and good for them.
Absolutely. Thank you. And then last point, Councilwoman Santana.
Mr. Edmond, I'm not sure if are you a director?
I'm the manager of architecture.
Okay, manager. Okay. So I'm not sure I am totally support of this legislation, but just a few questions, something that I've experienced and that I've been made aware of. When you partner with a contractor to do the maintenance, and this happens with a lot of capital projects, and Rick, you're going to know what I'm talking about, but how long is the warranty in place with the contractor? The chair.
Through the chair to the council member. So just to be clear, the actual property maintenance is not something that we contract with. That being said, there are certain warranties and guarantees associated with the construction project. And so there's the typical construction guarantee period, which is 12 months from the date of final acceptance. And that's very typical in the industry. And that covers essentially anything that goes wrong in the facility. In addition to that, there are various other warranties that are associated with specific systems. So, for example, the roof might have a 10, 15, or 20-year warranty. The mechanical units might have a 5-year warranty. So there are a couple of different warranties that are in play of different lengths. But then when we talk about a maintenance contract, that's something that goes through property maintenance, although we do coordinate as best we can with them to make them aware of maintenance issues.
Got it, okay. And through the chair to Edmund. So my experience has been a year is not long enough. After a year, things start deteriorating, right? And so I don't know if we have the capacity for maintenance, but what ends up happening is we end up with a product that maybe is broken or deteriorating, and then it just stays like that for a long time because it's only a year warranty. Is there any way to change that? Because we're experiencing that in Clark Avenue, right? We put in these capital projects, we got these planters, we got these garbage bins, and about 10, maybe to a year, maybe 13 months, they broke, and so now we don't have a warranty to fix them. So now we're left with broken items on Clark Avenue. I'm just curious to know if that could happen with the repairs of all these capital projects you just mentioned.
So through the chair to the council member, that's a bit of a complicated issue. I believe we are restricted by codified ordinance to a 12-year construction guarantee period, and that is also very typical in the industry. It would be difficult to have the construction contractor be responsible for maintenance beyond that, and typically the maintenance issues that arise after that are not the fault of the construction contractor. So there's a construction bonding and liability issue that gets tied into that as well. And I can't speak for property maintenance, but they typically don't have maintenance contracts that are associated with specific facilities, except for a couple special cases like the glycol system at the West Side Market and things like that. But they do have on-call contractors in addition to their own staff that they can call on to do specific targeted capital maintenance issues. I don't know if there's a better way to implement that on the facilities maintenance side, but I think that will be something that will be worth looking into.
Okay. I would definitely love to further discuss, because if the contractor does a poor job, you're not going to notice that within that year. You're going to notice it a little bit after that year, and then the warranty's up, and then we're left once again with the product that, the city has to maintain, or we have to add additional dollars to it. So anyhow, I yield to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any follow-up to what the councilwoman just asked, or you just want to follow up?
Through the chair to the council member, I think that's an excellent point. Thanks.
All right. Okay. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 622-2023 stands approved. And please, by all means, listen closely to what we just said. It's it's not a good time to try to get us big pieces in the summer. So just keep that in mind. Thank you. Last but not least, on muni services, and just to let the public know, after I do this, I'm going to do the economic development pieces, 796 and 797, that will be introduced and considered for approval tonight. And then we're going to break and then come back and finish up the rest of the docket. Okay? So, the next ordinance is ordinance number 661-2023 by council members Bishop and Griffin, by departmental request, an emergency ordinance determining the method of making the public improvement of constructing, rehabilitating, renovating, replacing, or otherwise improving recreation facilities, ancillary recreation buildings, and other similar structures on city-owned and city-leased park property, including site improvements and appurtenances, authorizing the Director of Public Works or Capital Projects as appropriate, enter into one or more public improvement contracts for the making of the improvement, enter into one or more professional services and other contracts needed to implement the improvement, to apply for and accept grants and gifts, and authorizing the direct employment of the necessary labor for the Department of Public Works and Office of Capital Projects. Ms. Chambers or Ms. Edmonds or Commissioner Sutowski? Okay, Mr. Edmonds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the partner legislation that is related specifically to the recreation bonds. The total estimated cost for the projects enumerated in the legislative summary is $10,100,000, and I'll run through the projects here and be happy to answer any questions. The first project listed is Calgary and Neff Parks renovations. This is $2 million, which is being combined with $1 million of existing 2022 bond money for the two parks together. They're currently under design, and we have had some initial public engagement. We met with a consultant yesterday to review the outcomes of that public engagement so that we can return to the community with the kind of sort of summaries and design outcomes based on what we've heard from them. So that design is underway. The second item is Rockefeller Yard Clean and Green project. This is a former streets facility that is just to the north of the Rockefeller Greenhouse. There are still some facilities, disused facilities on the site. This is to remove those, clean it up. The site is slated for a couple of future cultural gardens, and this is also in collaboration with the Rockefeller Greenhouse master plan that we're currently working on. The third item is the new JFK High School football stadium. This is the city's contribution to a new football stadium that will be built by CMSD and used by City of Cleveland Recreation, as well as the high school there. So we have the new rec center, the Frederick Douglass Rec Center, the park there, and then this will be a complement to that. The next item is Central Recreation Center Phase 4 renovations. Phase 3 is currently under construction, and this is the next phase of that. This also includes a new park adjacent to the existing rec center, which is being done in collaboration and coordination with CMHA and the county. As you may be aware, there was a very unfortunate fire at Central Rec Center a few weeks ago. We are currently working through that with the contractor to get that fire remediated so that they can then complete the phase of construction that they're working on right now. So there's some delay. We don't know exactly how much. There's some delay in the Phase 3 work, but we are moving ahead with Phase 4 design, and we're going to move ahead with the park without delay. That is at about 75-80% complete design, so we'll be ready to bid that out this year. The next item is Recreation Center locker rooms. This is locker room renovations that are currently under design for Hamilton, Cadell, Estabrook, and Fairfax Recreation Centers. We get probably the most complaints that we get about Recreation Center conditions are about the locker rooms, which is understandable. These are four very similar centers that were built around the same time, have similar layouts, and locker rooms are in similarly poor condition. These are also centers where we have already done some of the critical infrastructure work for these, such as roof replacements that we want to do before we start doing interior renovations. The next item is the next phase in our ongoing program of rec center roof and envelope packages. The next one that will go out here is Halloran Rink and Warming House. This $1 million is going to be combined with some existing funds and some buyout savings from previous roof projects. As I mentioned, Halloran is the next one, followed by Camp Forbes and then Thurgood Marshall. The final item is Zelma George Recreation Center dewatering. I think everyone's probably aware of the water infiltration issues at the track, which goes below, the walking track, which goes below grade there. That's been an issue since the building was constructed, and that walking track is very popular. We're currently in the investigation phase of this. There's some rather complicated hydrology going on that site. So we've been doing some well monitoring. We've done some pipe repair to eliminate certain sources. We're also going to be surveying the parking lot that's adjacent, which we think is contributing to the runoff that's leading into the building. So we don't know exactly what the solution is, but we're working our way through the investigation. So that's the projects for this one.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Bishop, any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We recommend his passage. A lot of important pieces in here, a lot of important projects in here, and I recommend this for passage.
Thank you. Council, just one quick question before I move to any other questions. What does renovation of locker rooms mean? Does that mean replacing the lockers, benches, showers, faucets, everything? What is, when you're saying renovated, it's a such thing as gutting it and putting all new fixtures, and it's a such thing as patchwork? Which one are we doing with that?
To the chair, that's an excellent question. In this case, this is a full gut. It's a reconfiguration to include, one of the things that's very important moving forward is including gender neutral or family restrooms, so it's including that. It's all new fixtures and finishes, and it's actually a reconfiguration. All of these are actually much bigger than they need to be, which is good in that it provides us space to have that family restroom. But right now, I'm sure you're familiar with some of them. They're not very user-friendly or don't feel very clean or safe.
User-friendly for Fairfax. I don't know about some of the other rec centers, but user-friendly for Fairfax is an understatement.
To the chair, these are all in more or less similar condition.
Okay, great.
Fairfax, and this is a complete renovation.
All these are needed. The other question that I have is, how do we hold people accountable for warranties and other things? And I know this is not the ward. I usually try to be respectful of everybody, but I know for a fact that Zelma George has gotten several times to try to address that water on the roof. And Councilwoman Gray knows because she's there all the time. How do we get warranty with this work to make sure that people are actually, we don't have to continue to do this? Because even like when I talk about the West Side Market and some of these other places, we're pouring money into this, and then when the issue doesn't get fixed, people say we need more money, but then when we have to make sure that we have other responsibilities, we can't even track what happened to the warranties and the guarantees that we had from the money and the work that we had before. How do we make sure that we guarantee that?
To the chair, there's so as I mentioned, there's the construction guarantee period. That 12-month period is administered by our division. So anything that occurs during there, we go back to the contractor for that. We will do periodic walkthroughs, and also we'll hear from the users if anything happens to that. And also at the end of that guarantee period, we have a final walkthrough with the contractor where we identify, it's like a second punch list where we identify anything that's deficient that's related to the construction. Now for particular warranties, such as I mentioned, the roof warranty, for the dewatering, there will probably be, let's say there's a sump pump and a watering membrane. I don't know yet, but let's say those are the two main components. There will be a manufacturer's warranty for the pump and probably for the membrane too. What we will do is we will receive the warranties and we turn those over to property maintenance to administer those.
Great. All right. Councilman Conwell?
Yeah, thank you very, very much. To the chair, how many recreation centers do we have? 21, 22?
Through the chair to the council member, if you count Camp Forbes and Halloran Rink, I believe it's 22.
22. And through the chair, I'm going to make this recommendation. Is kind of radical, and I know we get political on it. At the time when we had 22 recreation centers, we had close to 700,000 residents in the city of Cleveland. When you go into these recreation centers, I'm going to echo what Councilmember Starr was saying, nobody's home. Nobody's there. What if we look at, when we do a survey analysis, maybe we don't need as many recreation centers that we have, and then we could take the dollars there to put money into programming so that we can really help people and help the children as well as our residents in the city of Cleveland through the chair.
Through the chair to the council member, that's actually a very salient and relevant question right now. As you no doubt are aware, we're embarking on the Parks and Rec master plan, and just to be clear, that's not just a parks master plan, but that is looking very closely at the rec centers, and not just, so one is it the right number? Are they in the right locations? Mm-hmm. Are they the right size? Some of these rec centers are very large and underutilized.
Right.
But at the same time, these are also touchstones that we have throughout the neighborhoods where we could deliver services. So the question for us and our team and their public engagement is, what are the services we could deliver? What is a rec center of the future? Is it, we think of a rec center as a gym and a pool and some ancillary spaces, but what is it really that people need? And that's why the public engagement is such an important component of that. The answer to your question, do we have too many, is I don't know. But that's part of the investigation of the Parks and Rec master plan, is to see, is it these larger centers that people are meant to travel significant distance from? Is it more little things in the neighborhood?
Right.
Is it little clinics? You know, I don't know the answer, but that is a very important question for the services that we can deliver through REC and the other organizations such as Youth and Family Success that utilize those facilities to deliver their service.
You know what I would do? Look at CMSD schools. They are underutilized. You know, you have schools that's built for 2,000 students, and you might only have, at the time, 1/4 of the students there, through the chair, to the your director, right?
Manager, just Mr. Edmond is fine.
Okay, and that's good. You could put recreation centers inside of the school. It's the programming, not really the physical plant. It's the programming that we must work with the for our residents. When you visit other communities, they have libraries as well as recreation centers inside of their schools, and they work it together for the good of the whole. Through the chair.
Through the chair to the council member, I think that's an excellent point.
We can close that down. And then here's the other thing that's really, really sad. When you go into recreation centers, nobody's home. Nobody's home there. And what I see, and I'm not blaming it on the staff that's there because they're the staff. Here's one of the barriers, the reason why people won't go to recreation centers. When you have a neighborhood and when we have a lot of abject poverty in a community and they don't see success where they live at, also shelter poverty is what I'm looking for. And then when you go to recreation centers that we are supposed to be managing and doing preventive maintenance, the kid or even that senior citizen will look at it and say, it look hopeless, like where they came from. So you got to make it look better. So when they walk into Glenville Recreation Center, when they walk into Cordero Recreation Center, that they see hope there. They don't see ceilings that it's rain is coming through, or they don't see vermins running through the building, and it's not safe, warm, or dry for them, because that's what they're trying to escape. And it's so sad when you see that. So if you can't maintain it, then we must cut back. We must cut back. We spend, through the chair, how much money we spend a year on the recreation centers? At least $40 million.
Through the chair to the council member, I don't know what the maintenance and operation budget is of the rec centers.
Right.
So our total rec request for this year is $10 million. That includes the parks and the rec facilities.
And then here's the other thing, like we're, I think need to be in our strategic plan, it should be some systems in there to deal with preventive maintenance. I mean, you're spending all this money, and the council president just mentioned a warranty, but we have to also do preventive maintenance. You understand the warranty, you know when it's coming up, when it might expire. By doing preventive maintenance, we can save money on that also, and that need to always be in the budget. And how many people do we have that that's doing that? Or to the chair, do we have a checklist for someone checking preventive maintenance?
Through the chair to the council member, I don't know how many people are on maintenance's staff. We do work with them to help identify work that they can do through their requirements contracts, but I don't know what property maintenance's budget
Yeah,
is.
they need to be in there. I mean, you coming to us, talking with us, so take that back to them. You got to do preventive maintenance. Just like Rick, when you put that new street in on 123rd Street, you got to have preventive maintenance on these streets. I mean, really, it's crazy, Mr. President, that that's not the word I'm looking for. You're not being efficient. It's inefficiency there when you go back to a street or whatever the case may be constantly, and you're not doing preventive maintenance. So you're spending $250,000 on this widget, but you're not maintaining it. You're not changing the oil. So then it breaks down, then you come back to council and say we have to spend more money, and that's my residents' money, they're my bosses, and you gotta have it that we're more efficient. So you come back to us in our strategic plan, Preventive maintenance got to be there. If you're not going to downsize the recreation centers, and my children and the people from my community see abject poverty, the same thing where they came from, then we need to do at least preventive maintenance there. That's important, to keep to maintain the building. Because it's crazy to go out for a bond over and over again, and we're wasting dollars. That's not good. It's not good at all. So, I mean, that's where I'm at. Put that in our, and I'm going to have the administration come out to talk with my residents about Glenville Recreation Center, as well as Corey Recreation Center, and we're going to do a survey analysis, but I'm going to weigh in on your survey analysis also. I'm going to look at it. You know, have you seen how you're going to set the survey analysis up to the chair?
Through the chair to the council member, I've seen a draft of the survey, but I don't know if it's quite finalized yet. But there is going to be a big summit at the end of July. There's going to be a lot of information coming out about how to do the survey either in person, online. There's going to be a variety of ways to do that.
So you know what? When you do your strategic planning, put the background, separate background history for every recreation center, because it's like an individual service plan. Glenville Recreation Center is not the same as Cordell or Corey. So if you want to stimulate conversations, you do the background history. This is where we at Glenville, and this is how we need to move forward. Then you'll open up conversations with the crowd. Because you can't talk about Glenville and go on the west side and talk about Cordell. I mean, you just can't do it because they won't. It's culture, right? It won't translate. So you do the background history first, and then we move forward with the strategic plan. And that way we can evaluate it better through the chair. All right, I'm finished with that. Thank you very much.
All right,
Preventive
thank you.
maintenance, though, Mr. President, we need that.
No, absolutely. I think everybody agrees the same thing, Councilman. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number up. Councilwoman Spencer.
Wanted to note that in the summary, the sum, I have two things, Mr. Chair. First of all, the total seems to be incorrect by $200,000. The project seemed to add up to 10.3 million, not 10.1. I don't know if...
I like that.
Could you verify that? Make sure that we have...
I just think it's...
Sound like an economist.
Yeah. Do we know why that mistake is
It
there?
looks like the Central Recreation Center went up by 200,000, but from
Is that the case? Is that because of the fire? Or do we know what that had happened for?
Through the chair to the council member, I will double check on that. I'm not if that went up from 2.5 to 2.7. I'm not sure. It's not because of the fire. That's not going to be taken out of this. I will double check on that.
I don't think that affects the legislation, Mr. Chair, but I think it's important as we again, to that bigger conversation of bonding capacity and projects, I think it's important just to have the right total there. And I want to shout out Brooke Sabin, who caught that, and she communicated that. So just looks like it's off by $200,000, should be 10.3 million. And then I also had a question, Mr. Chair, about the JFK High School football stadium. I know that Councilman Jones is not at the table in this precise moment, but just wondering if it's typical for the city to contribute to CMSD facilities for facilities improvements.
Through the chair to the council member, my understanding is that this was part of the larger structure of the land swap that enabled us to build the Frederick Douglass Rec Center and get, so CMSD did a lot of site preparation and construction work for the Frederick Douglass Rec Center, and this was part of the understanding of that deal. I haven't done one quite like this before, so I don't know if it's been done in the past, but it will be available to recreation as well.
But if I can't clarify, and I'm going to look at Commissioner Swatowski because I do have some institutional knowledge. We did that with Collinwood, didn't we? Where we built Collinwood, but the high schools and the public schools were able to use it. To the councilwoman's point, Mike, do you know any historical knowledge? Because the councilwoman basically is asking, have we ever contributed to these kind of football fields or facilities where CMSD also utilized them? And the only instance that I can think of is Collinwood.
The city of Cleveland built Collinwood under the Jane Campbell administration, and then the CMSD has access to the field.
Got it. Okay.
You know where, may I?
Yeah, if you
Here's-
can.
Here's the case here. Bump Taylor Field, the former councilwoman, Sabre Pierce Scott, and I were able to legislate $700,000 for that field. But in order for us to do it, we had to push legislation for the city to take ownership of the the track field. We used it. We took ownership of the track field. So when the project closed out, then we legislated back over to the schools, but we had to have ownership of it. And that went through Nick Jackson. Worked with us on that right there, but we had to take the ownership. We put the $750,000 once the city owned it, and then we legislated back over to the schools. So now the schools, they have a track field, and we got to do it again in the long run. Thank you.
All right, Councilwoman? Right there? Okay.
That's fine, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to flag that it's kind of a unique situation. All right, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 6. Councilwoman Gray. I didn't see you over there. Go ahead, Councilwoman Gray.
Thank you. I just want to, thank you, Chair. I just want to re-clarify something that our chair mentioned about Zelma George and about the warranty. 30-some years ago when Zelma George was built and we had the watering problem, in the track, for over 30 years. And dealing with, I'm just trying to understand the jail bonds, dealing with the warranty over 30-some years ago, and now you estimating the cost for $250,000, again for the same problem. I just want to clarify, your answer on what our chair had asked.
Through the chair to the council member, I don't know what warranties may have originally been in place for, a waterproofing membrane. It's really honestly unclear to us if it's a design flaw or a material product failure. The reality is nothing in construction is guaranteed for 30 plus years. So I don't think there's anyone we can go back to say, hey, you're responsible for this. As I mentioned, there's some complicated hydrology going on there. The geotechnical profile is a lot of layers of sand and clay. So water that infiltrates tends to move horizontally in kind of unpredictable ways. There's groundwater potentially coming up. There's a high water table. There's also infiltration from rainwater. So there's a couple potential different sources. That's one of the reasons this investigation is taking some time. But in this case, I don't think there's anyone we can go back to and say, hey, Mr. Architect, this is your design flaw, or, Mr. Contractor, this is your installation flaw, or Mr. Manufacturer, this is your material flaw.
So how long?
Hold on 1 second.
So how long does the warranty cover?
Councilwoman,
per
do you
se?
want to finish up? Councilman Conwell asked for a point, or do you want to finish up your question?
I just want to finish up my question.
I'll get you right after Councilwoman's comments. All right, go ahead.
Through the chair to the council member, so there's a couple different components to that. There's the construction guarantee period, which essentially guarantees the quality of the installation and the workmanship of the construction itself, which is typically 12 months after final acceptance. But in addition to that, there are also specific manufacturer's warranties for various products. So if part of the solution is a sump pump, that would likely have a 5-year manufacturer's warranty or something like that. If we end up doing some drainage mat materials, that might have a 10-year warranty from the manufacturer. So, as we're working through the design, we can specify what type of warranty we want. Obviously, it has to be within industry standards or, they won't bid on it. But there are specific product warranties that often extend longer than the construction guarantee. And at that point, you're not going back to the contractor, you're going back to the manufacturer.
Okay, so how long this warranty going to last this time? Chair to Carter.
Through the chair to the council member, it depends on what the specific components are going to be, but there will be a 12-month construction guarantee. Part of the idea of that is it gets you through a full season cycle to see if the system you've designed works. But any mechanical components to that might likely have something like a 5-year warranty. Sheet material components might have something like a 10-year warranty. We'll have to see what products are available and what warranties are available for specific products associated with that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Because, because most important, we can't deal with this again like we dealt with 30 years ago. And a lot of other constituents, that use that track has a problem with this problem for over 30-some years. So we have to stay on top of this time. Appreciate it. All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councilman Conwell, you got the closing point.
With that strategic plan, when we look at warranties, what the president just mentioned, when you guys do your reviews in a strategic plan, you could put warranties in there. And when you sit down and talk about your strategy reviews quarterly, what warranties are being covered and what warranties are getting ready to have an end life. And you can put that in your strategic plan. Don't just. So what I don't want us to do, and I've seen this a lot, I've been here for a while, me as well as Councilmember Mike Polinsky, you'll do a strategic plan, not you, but then you put it on the shelf. And we spend all that money on it. So I think, not the implementation of it, but when you go through the monitoring and control of the warranties, you can put that in your strategic plan. And when you have meetings with the commissioners, whatever the case may be, they have to explain where we're at with all the warranties of what's getting ready to expire and have they done the preventive maintenance on it. And that might be the third part of your strategic plan. There might be you do the implementation, the planning, the trying to look at the execution, and then your monitor and control by it's like your fourth one. But you got to go over all those steps at least quarterly or semi-annually, or you're a waste of money that you're at the table at. You see what I'm saying? I'm looking at it in my mind right now, the strategic plan.
Yeah, through the council through the chair to the council member. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
All right, thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions, ordinance number 661-2023 stands approved. Once again, I'm going to do these next two quickly, and then we're going to take a break for lunch and then come back and try to finish out the day. If Terry Hamilton Brown, Director Hamilton Brown could come up. These two ordinances will be introduced and considered by the full council this evening for passage. And as she's making her way to the table, for the sake of time, this is ordinance number 796-2023 by council members Hairston and Griffin by departmental request for passage. July 12, 2023, an emergency ordinance approving the addition of property located at the intersection of East 97th Street and Lamont Avenue to the Northeast Ohio Advanced Energy District, accepting and approving a petition and plan from a property owner in the district identifying a special energy improvement project, declaring it necessary to conduct the special energy improvement project, providing for the assessment of the cost of such special energy improvement project, authorizing the Director of Economic Development to enter into an energy project cooperative agreement and a special assessment agreement to implement the project, and declaring an emergency. All of that is long wind for saying the PACE Award. So,
Thank you.
Economic Development Director, and then we have a guest, Michael Bowen, that's with us here today.
Yes, thank you, Chairman and members of council. Attorney Bowen is representing the developers. They are Kenny Wolf and Augustino Pintas. This is their second project.
All right, if you could put to the microphone, because these mics are not really, they don't pick up well, so you got to talk right into them.
Is that better?
Thank you. Yep, that's better. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. Actually, I even hear
Thank
myself.
you.
So.
Yep, you're good.
As I began to say, this is for a residential development. In Huff, Ward 7, at 97th and Lamont, the developers are Kenny Wolf and Augustino Pintos, based out of Akron. It's a special project in that we are not putting any financing in it. And as you talked about it, the PACE program stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy, and the developers are using a special assessment on the tax record in order to get low-cost financing. So the development overall is a $31,600,000 development, 77 units, a mix of apartments and townhouses, all with high energy efficiency, and that's why they're able to take advantage of this special financing. And Geist companies are the builders, excuse me. As I said, it's their second project. The first was at 90th. And 93rd, actually, north of Chester. And so we have received support for a letter from Councilwoman House. The project was first reviewed by the City Planning Commission in November of 2021, actually, and the ordinance was introduced earlier this year in May. And because the property is under construction and we need to have the legal documentation and assessments placed on the tax record before it's completed, we ask for introduction and consideration of passage.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Bowen.
You want to add anything, Mr. Bowen?
No, Director did a good job. That's pretty much everything.
Okay, thank you. I have Councilman Harrison. I know that he's relieved this and moved this forward. Did you have any comments from DPS Chair?
Thank you, Mr. President. No comments. In addition to what the director has indicated, just for members of council, again, this is not the first time we saw a PACE agreement come before us. We've seen CPACE come here that deals with the commercial aspect. This is PACE that deals with residential. And again, this is no cost to the city at all. This allows for the applicant to be creative in their financing, to utilize their property tax in order to help make some of the enhancements that the director has made. And I fully support. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. The illustrious Councilwoman of Ward 7, Stephanie House. I know that she has input on this.
Yeah, so, okay, I'm going to go to whoever drafted the amendment. So I'm going to go back. The reason why we're here today is because it was introduced before. It had my name on it, right? And I didn't know anything about it. So it was pulled. And so now it's coming back today. We actually talked about this. I am in full support of, but I always tell people, do not put my name on anything if I hadn't had a conversation about it. So please make an update to add my name to the ordinance, because I have approved it and we did talk about it and we are all good. But again, this is a project that has started prior to me entering this body, but again, as they're talking about, it is currently under construction now. This is at 97th and Lamont, where now our new PEP school is across the street from there. It's PEP Eastwood, excuse me. That is there. So, this will be continued development that is happening in Ward 7 as we are working to get a truly mixed income community where people of all socioeconomic statuses have the opportunity to live and play and engage with one another. So looking forward to engaging with residents. Thank you.
Hold that for me. All right, and just so that everybody knows, this did not move without Councilwoman giving her input on it. So please add Councilwoman House to this piece of legislation, if we could, for consideration. Councilman Joe Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to start out, it's just really special for us for me at least, sitting here at the table, to see Terry Hamilton Brown. And to see her here sitting at the table, of all cases and pieces, dealing with a piece that was in formerly Fannie Lewis's ward. Oh. Where at this table there were There was serious discussions in years past with Mrs. Lewis, and I called them a 101 learning experience for me as a young councilman coming in, because those were epic discussions, and they are just they're still seared into my soul. And so with that, we're fortunate to have Mrs. Brown here representing the city of Cleveland on the administrative side again. So I'm really appreciative of the work that Ms. Brown has done in the past, and how during that space and time under the Mike White's administration, how we had housing development in every ward. So there wasn't just some neighborhoods getting some work done. Every single neighborhood was getting work done. And the program at that time was called Neighborhoods First. And then Mike Polensek was then president of Cleveland City Council, and part of that one-term structure where Jay Westbrook was the president of Cleveland City Council, and then Mike Polensek became the president of City Council. And I really appreciate her hard work, and it's great to see you, Director, on the side of this table, as where you should be. And then I would just ask, on this particular ordinance, 796-2023, the last time it was here at the table, we were talking about a special energy project cooperative agreement. I had requested that I wanted to see what that agreement looked like. We have not received that. What was interesting at the time, Mr. Chairman, to Mrs. Terry Hamilton Brown was how the financials worked out. So I'm not sure if you want to elaborate on how that works, but this project is something surely that all council members could be utilizing in their respective territories.
Do you want to, because I know you gave a brief understanding earlier, but Councilwoman House, you had a point.
Yeah, so when it comes to...
Councilman Jones, would you allow Councilwoman House to have a point? Just a point?
Yes.
Okay, because other people allow you to have one, so you got to let it.
No, I don't have a problem.
All right,
Chairman, as long
Councilwoman,
as
go
the
ahead.
Councilwoman
I think it would probably be,
what I'm requesting.
so just through the chair to the councilman, I think if you would like, when it comes to the PACE program, the state of Ohio afforded this opportunity, and they have contracted actually with the law firm to actually do all of the applications that for the state. And so if you will be interested, I'll be more than happy to facilitate, if you would like, to get you connected to the law firm that actually does the PACE financing approval for all of the states, and then that way you can be more familiar, you know what I'm saying, just understanding how the financing works, if that was...
Yeah, and I would rather do it that way, Councilman, because it's kind of difficult, and it's sort of how they usually do like TIFs almost, where they use kind of like money that they would defer paying taxes that would go into like environmental roof protection, environmental controls, and it's really the wave of where a lot of people are going to get these kind of projects off the ground, because then you get certain kind of credits and other things. But I think it's a more involved conversation that I would love to team you up to get some more people to talk with you.
I would certainly take the gentle, distinguished lady up on that and setting that up. So I'll have my assistant reach out to you on that.
And Ms. Hamilton Brown says she's willing to be a part of that too.
And that'd be great. But, you know, because I know for the sake of time we have a lot of legislation, if you could do some of the finite points that are important in terms of the financing, just because we didn't do that before, because it was held because of the simple fact that the elected official in the territory wasn't aware.
So the shorthand is that the financing allows a loan to be used to pay for the environmental improvements to be paid back via a special assessment on the property taxes at the project site. And because the loan gets a priority level in terms of its lien position, the banks will provide cheaper financing because there's less risk to being repaid. And that's the principle. And you have to do certain environmental improvements, not any financing, not any construction, but special.
Right.
And that's the shorthand.
Thank you.
And then just a point,
on
Just,
that point? Go ahead.
and just to understand the financing of this project, there was about $9 million in equity that developers put of their own money. They received about a $19 million a loan, a traditional loan, and then they have the closing of the gap is this $3 million dollars that is coming from the PACE financing that gets the totality of the $31 million for these townhomes.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you. Look like she know the financial deck better than you.
Gee,
do,
you
Mike.
see, she beat me to
Yeah,
it.
exactly. All right.
Was that your comment? sir?
That's what I was going to say. It's last money.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
last money in. All right. Okay, seeing no other questions, once again, ordinance number 796-2023 will be considered for passage tonight in front of the full council.
Thank you.
Thank you. One last ordinance before we move to take a break for lunch, and then we're going to reconvene after about a half an hour, is ordinance number 797-2023 by council members Hairston and Griffin by departmental request for passage July 12, 2023, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Economic Development to enter into an agreement with the Urban League of Greater Cleveland or its designee to assist with costs related to outreach assistance and administration of the UBiz Micro Loan Fund and assistance training and planning for small businesses through the Entrepreneurship Center. Ms. Hamilton Brown.
Thank you. This request is to fund $218,663 to the Urban League of Greater Cleveland for supports to small business owners and to provide outreach and technical assistance, also operating small grants to them. The city economic development has been contracting with the Urban League since 2015 for this type of support. They're really part of our overall business outreach, expansion, and support efforts. Their original contract for support expired in September 22. It was then extended through March of this year. And since then, they have been doing the work and supports of small businesses, but without a contract. So this additional money that we are asking for approval will allow us to pay them for that lapse period and through the end of the year. At that time, the administration and leadership in economic development will return for a plan for a proposal for the new year. And so I can't explain all of what happened, but we would like to get them under contract and be able to pay them for their services.
Thank you. That's why this is time sensitive, so appreciate that. Any questions regarding this ordinance? Councilwoman Santana.
Just really quick, it's really not on this ordinance, but moving forward, as you said, for the proposal, would council be involved in that proposal? Or is that just administration that puts it together?
I don't know the practice, so I can't speak on that, but I certainly
President?
can follow up with you.
Usually it's the administration, but that's up to working with the director and working with Urban League, which they usually always take input from a council
Got it,
person.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
There are a number of other providers. It's not just the Urban League. And
Okay.
so we would be looking comprehensively.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilman Harrison, did you want to add anything to this before we move forward?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fully supportive. Director reached out. We had a discussion about both these pieces and was absolutely in support of both. Urban League has done a lot of great work in our community and continues to. And to Councilwoman Santana's point, absolutely. The director and I also had a conversation about the other providers who are doing this similar work and how we need to take a deep dive on reviewing each of them. And at some point, we will come back together to discuss the other individual groups, and we will also bring them to the committee table as well for further discussion. And have no objections. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Seeing no other questions, this ordinance will be heard tonight for full consideration. 797-2023 will be heard, full consideration of the body. We're going to break until 1:15. We're going to adjourn. Please be back by 1:15. Once again, we still have a lot of legislation to go through, so I'm asking everybody to be back by 1:15. Thank you. Oh, could everybody please sign the plaques?